Oh, what a happy coincidence. So from uh, so it's 5:42 local, 21:42. So from 20:45 till 21:06, just time enough for the story to run and not be repeated for another half hour. We cannot get broadband. Sorry, we get broadband, we don't get internet. Okay. As soon as we get internet, let's see, 37 minutes. Again, just enough time that the only story I'm going to share with you, runs past again. Wow. That seems so random that it happens every fucking day. Jesus Christ. So Chomo must have gone on his fucking whatever break. I don't have much for you, but so let's see, where the fuck am I? But we're up to 320. What the fuck is that? What the fucking hell? Fuck. Look like somebody threw something at my fucking screen. What the fuck? Oh, Jesus Christ. Please make this take longer, YouTube. This is the best interface in the world. Fuck's sakes. Jesus Christ.
The only manufacturer has risen in recent years across Canada. Shootings have become more common. Many Canadians feel threatened in their own communities.
Fuck off. I feel. Fuck off.
To help keep Canadians safe by banning assault-style firearms.
Invent a thought in your head. What is an assault-style weapon?
Illegal firearms trafficking.
They're already prohibited.
We can reduce
They're all already prohibited.
A message from the government of Canada.
Which doesn't mean you can't have them. This means you need a special license.
Larger states to save, you can always expect more.
All right, so we're having incredible problems picking up the radio, the internet radio, for some reason. We'll find another app for that or something. We're up to 325 cases yesterday, the reporting today. We got the worst matches in the world going on. Oh, that's hard to tell that it's ripped, but this keeps happening, where I'm getting half of a match at a time. See this shit? You know me, I'm gonna try to use that anyway because I used the one half already. This crap here is fucking ridiculous. These don't work, okay? You're looking at the cheapest possible production. It's glued together. It stinks of creosote. And you cannot, I don't know if you can see mathematically the difference here. This is paper, so they can cut it and then put it like that, dip it in whatever they're dipping it in, and then it's one piece, but they're just offset enough. So these, they can't do that. They make the head small as fuck. And yeah, it's glued together, so you get glue, some weird industrial glue all over your fingers. Good, touch that to your cigarette. I can't tell precisely. It's like fine. It's like the best pine, softwood pine you could get. Why did you do that? You can make this out of used toilet paper or newsprint, and you. It looks like a 25 or it looks like a 30 pack of matches. It's not. It's 20. That's a 30 pack on the outside. It's 20 matches on the inside, and you have to use 2 at a time, and they don't fucking work. And they fucking explode because you got this little tiny tip. I had one fucking, the little tiniest piece explode in my fucking face. That's useful. That's useful. Oh, and what am I bitching about? Your advertising. What are you advertising? Is this the one that does not mean a safer filter? I know that. 10% more tobacco than a blah 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 king size cigarette at a great low price. 10% more tobacco. By weight, by volume? Is it wetter? Is it just a longer cigarette? What game are you playing? Because you've been doing this weird thing where you keep putting less and less tobacco in the cigarette. You're doing the same thing they do with the double up cocaine, where they heat it up without water, meaning that they're heating it up with no limit on the temperature. There's no, yeah, so you're vaporizing all the product while you're trying to make it look twice as big. There's less than half as much in there. It's the same thing you're doing with all this shit. It's bad enough I'm fucked up on these. You're going to fucking play more psychological games thinking we won't figure this out? How quickly can I roll the joint? Faster than 12 minutes.
Got it at the doctor. I got a Rello twisted thicker than a rising thread. Got me feeling nice.
Yeah, the cheapest possible cost of production. Let's see here. The Good Idea SRL, I don't know what that means. Rome, Italy, / made in Poland, imported for Imperial Tobacco Canada Limited. I wonder where this would come from. Just wonder. What are these ones? Just Imperial Tobacco, blah, blah, blah. Hey, what's it say? Atlas or something. Where does it say that? Product of USA, manufactured by Atlas Match, Arlington, Texas, imported by X-Light Corporation. That's interesting because the guys at the store telling me they can't get the Eddie matches right now. And this is basically the exact same product, but what's with all this advertising? What's with all the extra ink and everything? I want a plain, unbleached fucking package.
Putting on my neighbor name. I got that bomb cut straight from Hiroshima. Orange Kush, call that bitch Wiz Khalifa. President Obama got me smoking presidential. And on my weed man, that they carry big credentials. Smoking on some banging grip straight from South Central. I told the head this and the head turned into that. I am nervous while I'm burning. Presidential Bill Clinton and she's slurping. Steak in the air like a landfill. This could slide it in a flock of play air. I smell it through the smoke.
Right,
I was so
just sitting there.
got it at the doctor with the weed card. Experimental when it comes to the medical. Commander-in-chief smoking presidential.
It's one thing after the fucking other. They did have it lined up there, didn't they? I don't know why you waste your time.
Feeling like the president. Middle state you never been. Kush out with Washington and Lincoln. Jefferson, Jackson, and Benjamin. We all cushed out on Montel medicine. I'm smoking on the type of weed to win awards. Presidential suite on the 420th floor. My weed man, dude, on Pineapple Express. Obama got me lifted, military dress. Passenger 420 on Air Force One. Smoking so much kush like I got 4 lungs. THC releasing dopamine to high level. Got me laughing at everything like I'm real feral. Lighting up everywhere like it's legal. Lighting up like it's Christmas Kris Kringle. Smoking on Barack while drinking on some rock. Got me fucked up like I can whoop rock.
So it looks like somebody threw some on my TV while I was gone. Yeah, just like somehow you got my router password. I know you got a buddy that fucking works here who has keys to the houses, and another buddy who's the security that can just delete videos whenever he wants. We know. You're not a genius criminal or whatever. You're not a hacker. You're just a stalker, a pedophile. Okay, hold on. No, not ready to go. Oh. What did you do to these that they don't stay lit? What did you do to them that they don't stay lit? It was creating suction and it just stopped.
I got got a Reno twisted thicker than a roster bridge. Got me feeling nicer than home when they were near. I got that bomb kush straight from Hiroshima. Orange kush, call that bitch Wiz Khalifa. President Obama got me smoking presidential. And on my weed, man.
You see what's happening here? They put flame retardants in the cigarette. That cause cancer. They put flame retardants in the matches. That cause cancer. Then they tell me that tobacco is a problem. There's gasoline in the cigarettes they want to sell me. All right. There is no gasoline in this ones, but they sell it to put flame retardants. Why? And if you're wondering, these lines are watermarked. Water. Like, what is the fucking point of all this shit you people do? It doesn't work in the end. You're never going to outsell us. Did you see the spark? Jesus. Because everybody wants to do things their way. That's what's happening here. It's fucking hilarious to me.
That they carry big credentials. Smoking on some banging grills straight from South Central. I told the head this and the head turned into this. How you learning? While I'm burning. Presidential Bill Clinton and she slurping. Steak in the air like a landfill. This could slide it in the flock of flame air. I smelled it through the jump. I was so out. Got it at the doctor's with the weed card. Experimental when it comes to the medical. Commander in-chief smoking presidential.
With the windshield. You're gonna feel how that windshield, that wind feels. You don't think you want to send the windmill spinning like a Gatling gun. Keep on not when we sing to get our breakfast and dinner. I'm gonna punch you. Oh, you don't like that? Keep it up. Oh, and as soon as I get this rolled and lit, yeah, the rotor will reset magically. It still don't make you a hacker if you have to physically access the computer to do it.
My weed man through the Pineapple Express. Obama got me lifted, military press.
The thing I find hilarious, there's these amateur random idiot sex offender types that will spy on you, stalk you, whatever, while the real police are also, you know, watching out for what you're doing and shit. And it's somehow my fault that they're interfering with each other. All right. These people getting mad. They bombard our system to the point where neither the phone or the fucking whatever, nothing will work. You're not hackers. You're a known group of pedophiles. You fucking name yourselves and shit. Like, I'm not going to get too deep into it, because why? I don't give a fuck. You're going to die chipped to death. You know why? Because we need the money, and the neighbors don't give a fuck what we do to you.
420 on Air Force One. Smoking so much kush like I got 4 nuns. THC releasing dopamine at high level. Got me laughing at everything like I'm Will Ferrell. Lighting up everywhere like it's legal. Lighting up like it's Christmas Kris Kringle. Smoking over rock while drinking on some rock. Got me fucked up like I can whoop rock.
Where are you? Hey, there you are. How does it feel to know you only have a few more seconds left to live?
Somebody hit my fucking screen with something.
Check it, I say 2 L's up, rock smoke up, from banks I held up. Many bitch ass niggas big L stuff. I never catch cold feet when I hold heat. We roll deep in the triple black, don't send an OG. I catch a bag 3 o'clock.
It's like Spider, like somebody smashed it because you're stupid.
Tell them give it up quick, you did wit. Don't try to get slick, or I'ma let this 4/5 spit and leave your shit split. Brick, it ain't nothing decent about me. A true thug for real, you can ask the priest about me. A rap junkie, don't try to play me like some funky. Juice be chunky. Pockets lumpy, attitude grumpy. Mad niggas be frontin' a lot. Poppin' mad shit, trying to be something they not. No faggot ass better stick to dancing. Don't even look at me, I might break your jaw just for.
Even in terms of damaging a screen, that's in the least noticeable position possible. It's not just at the edge or in the corner, it's at the lower right corner. You know how rarely I'm going to even notice that? The fuck is wrong with you people? This goes right along with how, like, it'll never be like, steal the TV set. That's too obvious. Notes with phone numbers written on them, you know, things like that. Like these stupid little things I find everywhere that I stick up on a shelf that don't mean anything to me, really. They're sort of symbolically. Those will go missing. Oh, if I take it and he doesn't notice, I got one in on him. So I'm like inside his head because I'm like psychological. No, you're not. You're a pedophile.
That's right. In 97, all them kids is blowing.
If we're pedophile killers, hey, you hate us for no apparent reason, you won't tell us why. Or you would clarify why you don't like us. So it must be because of the pedophile killer part.
We don't trip, we'll let a bitch starve till her ribs are showing. He's a divine mastermind, to turn nickels to dimes, authentic, genuine, that's out to shine. The cool cat, the true Mac with screw rap. Chickens be like, who that? I be doing my thing, kid. Sit front and I'm beyond that. I roll with brothers ready for combat. All for eye-to-eye contact with skills, G. Yo, it's ill, see, for real, me. Ain't no boss, you better stop trying to grill me. Sit dead style, so the essence got niggas stressing my style. Feels like caresses, no question. Tough type, the clutch mic, the positive upright. I'm now, I don't give a fuck type. Expose the facts, you know that has to go last astrological. Like the signs in the zodiac, the raps,
right now. If a fourth wave leads to hospital admissions, healthcare workers will not be able to clear the surgical backlog from the last 3. That warning from an ICU doctor in Toronto. Lengthy lineups at border crossings as Canada reopens to non-essential travel.
I'm not anticipating an influx.
But officials say it will be a gradual recovery for the hard-hit tourism industry. Toronto is roasting under a heat wave this week, with it forecast to feel like a brutal 40 degrees. But why are the city's cooling centers still closed?
The same reason all the water fountains in the niggerhoods are turned off.
And 4 Canadians will be on court at the National Bank Open today. Sports at 15.
TSX and Dow fall from a record closing lower. The price of oil sinking as COVID-19 cases tick higher. Business at 26.
680 news time, 601.
Traffic and weather together on the ones brought to you by gdriver.ca. Airport and Chopper 680. Kyle.
Well, it is certainly hot out there. I hope your car has air conditioning because Chopper 680 does not. What do we talk to you about that? Anyhow, the 401 busy eastbound.
You can't turn on an air vent in that thing?
Parkway, right lane block
really?
for the collision. Heavy approaching Highway 25 to east of James Snow. And then an issue approaching the 404 collectors did clear. Busy across the city, 427 to the 404 alternately expressing collectors. Now there's a problem approaching Kennedy in the collectors. Left lane blocked with a stalled vehicle just before Kennedy. We've got a jam Victoria Park collectors to approaching Kennedy. Then it's busy in Durham region. West HO approaching Lakeridge. Brock Street to east of Dixon. West 401 ramp issue. Northbound White's Road ramp to West 401 was partially blocked with a mattress there on the ramp. Watch out for it. We have approaching Warden in the express. All lanes affected with tire debris. So heavy Brimley in the express to approaching Warden. Then approaching Kennedy in the collectors as well. Through the Allen Express and collectors to Dixon.
Okay, so like the odds are like tire debris, you know, the odds are like not that high. And then if you called mattress, you now get to make a donation to the cause of your choice at a higher number of odds. Like that was the rare. We go, yeah, I called mattress and it came up in traffic report bingo.
Are
Well, whatever. whatever that was sounding like.
Slow approaching Langstaff to north of Teston, northbound DVP 404, slow approaching Don Mills up to York Mills, and then in between Highway 7 and north of 16.
If it was outdoors,
busy.
it would be better adapted to the really bright sun in the afternoons and shit. It's not, because it only gets that a couple hours a day, like 3-4 hours a day.
To west of Strawn, westbound QEW
Through a window, like it's indoor air, but it's outdoor temperature.
And then it's really heavy still on the westbound QEW from Bronte to west of Guelph Line. Our earlier problem here, west of Guelph Line is gone, but the delay remains. Eastbound QEW, slow Dorval to Ford Drive, and then Huron, Ontario to Dixie. Onto the eastbound Gardner, it's busy between Park Lawn and Dufferin. Are you looking for a new career? Vita HR Services is hiring over 100 G-Class delivery drivers in Whitby, Cambridge, Hamilton, and London. Apply in less than 60 seconds at gdriver.ca. Next report at 6:11 with the forecast. Here's Natasha Ramsahai.
Yep, hot and muggy, just waiting for that heat warning to be issued. Environment Canada, 23 degrees is our overnight low, so you don't even get to cool down tonight. It's going to feel like 30 at the coolest point of the night. We will see some sun early tomorrow morning. Storms starting around 10 a.m.
23 humid X 30. Wow.
And these will come through with gusty winds, risk of hail, and heavy downpour. So travel
these
will be
fans apparently take like 0.6 amps. Old ones take 0.8, and then I got a cheap one here.
Storms, although the
very cheaply made
will
one.
be
It's 0.2 amps or something, like 0.25 or
strongest up into cottage country. Tonight down to 23 degrees. It's currently 30 degrees, feeling like 39 at Pearson.
680 News Time, 6:04.
Begin tonight with Ontario healthcare workers currently trying to catch up with a large surgical backlog created by the previous waves of the pandemic. But now one Toronto ICU doctor is warning that work could be at risk if this fourth wave leads to rising hospitalizations.
680's Michelle.
We get the water fountains turned on, and the dentistry backlog. How about painkillers for black people? How come we have to wait twice as long in the emergency room? That's a fact. And we're half as likely, so much less likely to get the medications we're supposed to get. What the book says we're supposed to get.
Care will be delayed and patients will suffer. Some could die.
What we're seeing in other parts of the world is with the fourth wave and with Delta, patients are tending to stay in the ICU.
The rising tide raises all boats.
Because sometimes they're quite young. And that means that bed is not being able to be in circulation for patients who might require an ICU bed after an operation.
And to prevent this from happening, Warner says the province needs to do what it can to get Ontario to 90% vaccination coverage to prevent the spread of the Delta variant.
You're making up numbers as you go, bro.
Right now, we have a little more than
from 65 to 85 to 70, 75, 60, 90, 95. You keep changing.
Michelle Morton.
Your theory's never been proven. It's still a theory.
More than 300 new COVID cases for a fourth straight day. It appears a growing number.
Like in quantum physics and physics and mechanics and things, thermodynamics, they know the theory of relativity is a theory. You understand? You're working like the things you think in your head that nobody told you, you just believe for some random reason. Facts. It's for what? Idiots out here trying to start arguments. Oh, the virus takes 40 years to mutate, so how did that happen?
Under 12 who were too young to get the
told you that?
vaccine.
We are seeing the resurgence of these COVID-19 cases in York region, with our case counts in recent days very similar to those we were experiencing at the peak of the first wave of the pandemic. Now, we are expecting this increase will continue into the fall.
Almost 72% of those 12 and older in Ontario are fully vaccinated. Provincial numbers
so it's more than
show people
66.
who are
What was
unvaccinated are
2/3, 65? With 2/3 is 66.7, right? Or
Franklin.
0.66667 or whatever.
This is
70, 75. You're 72.
Today marks a new beginning.
By the way,
for
those
Canada
percentages
and the US
assume
with fully
eligible.
vaccinated
Like,
Americans now permitted to
it's the
enter
same.
country despite
You
the
compare it
opening
apples to
up.
apples.
It may be too soon to say tourism is really back. 680's Caitlin Lee joins us live with the latest. Caitlin.
Yes, Lieutenant, in order to cross the border, Americans must be fully vaccinated at least 2 weeks before heading through and show proof of a negative COVID-19 test that's no more than 72 hours old. Niagara Falls Mayor Jim Diodati says it may be too many hoops to jump through for some day trippers who want to come to Canada.
I don't believe that we're going to have a bad rush for the border. I think it's going to be first families wanting to reunify with relatives.
Yeah, all those people who waited a year and a half and then, well, oh, it's the government's fault I can't go home. They told you to go home.
Tell me they're not expecting a big boost. Others cutting their losses this season, hoping for a better 2022. But there are Some Americans making the journey today, taking a vacation.
A tourism-based economy is not an economy. It's entertainment and panhandling mixed together. It's bus.
Canadians not able to take a day drive over to Michigan to shop just yet. The U.S. extending its land border closure to at least August 21st. Canadian Travel and Tourism Roundtable calling on the fence to.
So the CBSA went on strike, and then they got what they wanted, like real fast.
Recovery for the tourism industry. Reporting live, I'm Caitlin.
This is 680 News. Well, as you've heard from Kyle, it's warm out right now, 30 degrees, but feels closer to 40. And that'll be the case for the next few days. 680's Karen Seolan joins us live with the latest on a hot, humid week on the way. Karen.
Yeah, James, after a wet and overcast July, this week will mark the longest stretch of
or if it was a random shooting. At this point in time, again, they would like to speak to anyone who may have been just getting home from a night out or maybe arriving, waking up to begin their Sunday morning, just to chat to them to see if maybe they, saw something. All we know at this point in time is that the two shooters fled on foot. They were wearing all black clothing and face masks. Alan?
Thank you, Morgan. Police are on the hunt for a suspect who fled the scene after a chain reaction crash in Uxbridge sent 6 people to hospital, including 2 children. Our crime specialist, Catherine McDonald, has the story.
This was the aftermath of a terrible crash just after 9 Sunday night. Durham police say a white Ford F-150 pickup truck was traveling eastbound on Goodwood at Lake Ridge Road at a high rate of speed when it rear-ended a Ford Escape, propelling the Escape into the intersection where it collided with 2 more vehicles. The Ford F-150 then lost control, hopped a curb, and burst into flames in a ditch. By the time police arrived, the occupants of the pickup truck were gone.
When we arrived on scene, we learned the occupants of that vehicle had fled the scene. The vehicle itself was engulfed in flames when we arrived.
Investigators also learned the pickup truck had been reported as stolen in Lindsay earlier in the day.
Police say 6 people in the 3 vehicles the stolen pickup truck collided with were hurt. All were rushed to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, including a 2-year-old and a 14-year-old. The 2-year-old was rushed to a Toronto hospital where the child remains in stable condition.
Well, it was a troubling scene, obviously, with that many people involved, that many vehicles involved in an accident. So it was troubling, it was challenging for our...
Collision, you fucking retard.
In fact, it's like 3 collisions.
Police say one of the 2 suspects believed to have fled from the stolen pickup truck has now been arrested. But a second suspect, described as male white, approximately 25 to 30 years of age with blonde hair, partially shaved on the sides, and a medium build, remains at large. The couple also had a medium-sized dog with them, possibly a golden retriever.
We have no idea if they fled on foot or if they were picked up by another vehicle. We're still looking at that, trying to figure that out.
It's unclear which of the 2 suspects was driving. If you saw the white F-150 pickup truck and can help police, you're asked to call them. Catherine McDonald, Global News. Still to come at 6.
So, there were 3 vehicles at the intersection stopped, bumper to bumper, or that couldn't happen. That's your fault. I don't know about the first car, but the other 2, it's your fault. Why are you so close? 2 meters, 6 feet. Both feet on the brakes and put the handbrake up or whatever. Oh, I just put my transmission in park. That's not a brake. That's setting your that's interlocking your transmission to not move. That's not to hold the car.
Tiny mirrors on the bottom.
A true diamond shines like a disco ball.
Scintillation.
A disco ball. You realize the people you're marketing to don't know what the fuck a disco ball is.
Along on the West 401, that issue. Eastbound 401, Province and Milton, still east of James Snow Parkway. Right lane blocked for the collision. Heavy approaching Highway 25 to east of James Snow. Then 427 to Leslie, alternately express and collectors. A brief break for collector travelers before it jams again. DVP to approaching Kennedy in the collectors, but Province and Kennedy cleared. And then it's busy West A to approaching Lakebridge. Brock Street to east of Dixon. From the 680 Traffic Center, Craig Gear.
An issue on the southbound DVP as you approach Baby Board. Right lane's blocked off with
a stalled vehicle. The police are on scene here, so just to get out of that right lane is causing some delays from about Don Mills southbound. The 404 DVP is slow from south of Finch through to York Mills as well. On the westbound Gardner, slow approaching Jarvis to west of Strawn. Westbound QEW coming off the 427. In between the 427 and west of Cawthra, it's slow. And then Burloak to west of Guelph line. It is improving through there a little bit, but still heavy. Eastbound QEW busy Dorval to Ford Drive, here Ontario to Dixie, and the East Gardner is slowing from Park Lawn to Dufferin. Ready to renovate? Home Reno Direct can transform your bathroom into a relaxing oasis. Connect with a renovation expert today and renovate with confidence at homerenodirect.com.
You got like fucking glass sliding patio doors on your fucking bathroom or something that makes it so awkward. Like, what are you talking about? They face the street too, don't they?
There's a tweet in my app.
Damn street-facing bathroom patio glass doors. At least if they were facing the side of the alley.
Severe, potentially damaging wind gusts and hail and heavy downpours.
Hail? What the fuck? It's 40 degrees and frozen water is going to fall out of the sky. That's not physically possible, you fucking...
32 degrees, humidex 42. Tonight we're down to 23 degrees.
You just say 42, humidex 42. Is that today? That was tomorrow? What?
Slipping from the record highs they notched on Friday, and really the overarching concern was investors worried about an upticking.
Overarching. An arch is an arc, but not all arcs are arches.
The Canadian Armed Forces.
There is no more time. We had to get these people out yesterday. We are putting these people at risk so that politicians can get voted back in the next election. Let's get the politics out of this.
On Point with Alex Pearson.
Can you see the Expendables?
640 Toronto.
As we welcome fully vaccinated Americans back to Canada through the land border for non-essential reasons, that same border still remains closed to many of us.
And Canadians who own property in the United States have not been able to cross the border in 18 months now. And Erica Vella reporting tonight, they're expressing frustration over the fact that our neighbors to the south can come into Canada, but that is not being reciprocated.
I'm a very hands-on landlord.
When Sylvia bought 2 properties just across the U.S. border in Niagara Falls, New York, she thought she would be there every couple weekends.
Like, I'm going to fix them up. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be painting. I'm going to be fixing up everything.
But over the past year and a half, she's been able to access the homes on 3 occasions. Only once was she able to travel through the land border.
Because I had an emergency situation.
She has had to manage properties virtually from her home in Oakville and relying on neighbors to help.
I know my houses need some work, and I'm limited to what I can do.
In March 2020, border restrictions were put in place in an effort to battle the COVID-19 pandemic. And month by month...
So it's a border house. It's a boarding house, border house.
Announced it would open its borders to...
Third is breaking news, traffic, and weather. This
should and does set its own border policies.
I think it's a complicated situation, and there's a lot of factors at play.
One of those factors, the U.S. hasn't developed a system where they can screen for health status at the land border. Currently, Canada has the ArriveCan app, but Troutman says there are other factors as well.
So if the U.S. lifts restrictions on the Canadian border, in all likelihood, that would have to be reciprocated on the Mexican border. And once that happened, the ability for asylum seekers to begin to make claims would be reinstated.
In a statement from the Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Customs and Border Protection says visiting properties doesn't fall under essential travel. So Canadians desiring to visit the properties in the United States would have to fly to their destinations until non-essential travel restrictions are lifted.
I cannot comprehend why I can walk through a jam-packed airport, sit at Chicago O'Hare waiting for a flight to Buffalo for 10 hours, be in a plane with 300 people, to go to a house that's 35 minutes away.
Sylvia says she's hoping to visit her tenants and the properties in the fall, with the hope that the U.S. land border will finally open. Erica
This is not getting evicted.
A hot, hazy, sultry evening out there. Staying dry around the GTA for now, but some showers and thunderstorms in the forecast tomorrow. Could be on the strong side. I'll time those out for you in your full forecast just ahead.
So,
I like that use of the word time.
What if I said fixed or variable? 3 years or 5, 10, 25? 5-year extension, that worth.
Sur cette version de Summer Serenade composée par Benny Carter. Il y avait également James Williams au piano, Rufus Reed à la contrebasse et Victor Lewis sur cet enregistrement, Victor Lewis à la batterie, pardon, sur cet enregistrement de 1988 paru sous étiquette Prestige. On va pour
présentait également le résultat négatif à un test de dépistage de la COVID-19 qui aurait été effectué dans les 72 heures précédant cette visite. Ils doivent également être enregistrés en ligne en utilisant l'application ArriveCan ou ArriveCan pour donc avertir les douanes de leur arrivée. Et tout ça, c'est un peu plus de travail. Mais il y a beaucoup de visiteurs qui ont quand même décidé de s'en prémunir dès la première journée d'ouverture. C'est le cas, entre autres, de Debbie Earl.
PodCity.net. You can do amazing things with just one casino chip. Discover a world of incredible casino games with over 500 high-quality online slot games, including the world-renowned Progressive
$1 million selling and buying system. Call 416. That's 416-917.
For fuck's sakes, how'd you go from 35 to 5? What the fuck is this? Jesus Christ.
Between 1 and 3 p.m. This Saturday features we're going to still visit scene of JD's experience.
Daniela Bouchot et Brandon White habitent à moins de 15
minutes en
voiture l'un de l'autre. Ils avaient pris l'habitude
42 with the humidity. But you got mosquitoes.
Mais ils ne s'étaient pas vus en personne depuis 16 mois. On a assisté à leur rencontre ce matin. Je vous invite à les entendre.
It was definitely challenging, I'll tell you that. It
really
was
traumatic, but thank God for WhatsApp.
And then,
well, we're gonna catch up.
640 Toronto is committed to the highest standards of broadcasting. We
Me too. Me too. Yeah, sure we are.
In our information and entertainment program.
You can write us a letter, put it on a donkey.
We'll respond to your letter and send you information on the council and its codes.
A letter.
A message from the Canadian Association of Broadcasters and Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
Do it on a typewriter. Really freak them out.
Addiction is a serious issue.
You're bigger too, right?
Seriously, join registered therapist Yona Budd Saturdays at 10 p.m. as he offers to assist you in dealing with addiction, mental health challenges, and more. Road to Recovery with your host, Yona Budd, Saturdays at 10 p.m. only on 640 Toronto.
This is what it's like for me to get any information at all through the media here, right into the broadcast. They're not telling us much of anything. There's 325 cases, and the border's open. Oh, that's a great idea, isn't it?
You may be entitled.
And the border services agents went on strike, and then they negotiated before it went into effect or whatever.
Their employer. Now, severance offers are more deficient than ever at a time when Canadians are in desperate need of support. Before you accept any severance offer,
nearly 2 degrees hotter than pre-industrial levels, and then in about a decade, global temperatures will
good, because it was fucking cold back then.
Level of warming that world leaders have sought to prevent. The report calls for an end to the use of coal and fossil fuels.
Now, great, the country's still using coal.
The impacts of that.
They criticize China, but China just built their own style of nuclear reactor.
That's right, Alan and Tracy. Hot and humid conditions out there today, and
we
will continue to see those conditions tomorrow. What is going to change the sky conditions? A beautiful evening out there. Yes, it is hot and humid.
No,
But it is early
wildfires.
August, after
Wildfires. They
all.
didn't mention
We are going to
wildfires.
continue to feel that humidity and the warm conditions, but we're going to throw in some showers and thunderstorms into the mix, especially tomorrow morning into the early afternoon, with the possibility of some strong gusty winds and some hail with these storms. Now, by the evening hours, the chance of showers and thunderstorms will wane.
It's 42 degrees and ice cubes are going to fall out of the sky. That doesn't make sense. I know it's physically possible, but it just doesn't make sense to me.
The cloud
How
cover
often it happens.
suppressing some of those temperatures. Heat warning southwestern Ontario. Not that it's not hot in other areas, it's just not quite making the criteria for eastern Ontario in a heat warning too. And as we look at what's happening, dry conditions today, but you can see this line of showers and thunderstorms and strong storms through Illinois. And we're going to see that line move from west to east overnight. Got a big ridge in the upper levels of the atmosphere.
He's not mentioning wildfires or anywhere with a fire whatsoever. All across northern Ontario, BC. I think the whole coastline, the west coastline, is on fire right now. The only update I have on that is it rained in BC, and for a little while that helped a little bit. I have no other updates than that. They're not telling us about it, but you can see the air in a way that you shouldn't be able to see. Like everybody's having a bonfire right now across Canada is what the air looks like.
More severe weather, though, will be tomorrow as we look at rainfall amounts. Some heavier bands of rain possible if your neighborhood or community does experience a thunderstorm. So overnight tonight.
Oh, so if it rains, there's going to be more rain. I really hope I didn't hear what I just heard, but I think that's what he just said.
Highway 7, that's always the case. Northbound 410, slow north of Steeles up to north of Queen. Again, nothing unusual there. Eastbound QEW, busy northbound of
Between 26 and 28 degrees around the Golden Horseshoe, so not quite as warm because of the cloud cover. And you can see back up to 31 with that potential for showers and thunderstorms Wednesday and Thursday. The hot conditions continue for the next few days. We start to cool down, though. Temperatures closer to average by the weekend.
I'm just trying to find out if China and Russia are going to war with the U.S. right now. You know? Like, I'm trying to find out, is the air so thick that I'm going to get lung cancer if I go outside? Like, guaranteed or something?
Potentially damaging wind gusts and hail and heavy downpours. And then we're getting up to 30 degrees, humidex 41. Could see a few more isolated late afternoon storms. Wednesday, mainly cloudy. Another risk of late day storms and a high of 32 degrees, humidex 42. Tonight, we're down to 23 degrees.
It's been a long, lonely year for so many seniors. Now it's time to make sure you have the support and care you need beyond what family can provide. You deserve more than back to normal. I'm Doug McClatchy, CEO of Amica Senior Lifestyles. Whether you need a little help or a lot, you don't have to do it alone. We can help with exceptional care in a premium residence with safe social connections that make life easier and better for everyone right now. See for yourself. Book a tour at amica.ca.
We work for you.
So my grandfather was a chairperson on a review of a report from an inquest into the Mississauga the extended care nursing home fire. I think it was 1980, July 14th, 1980, something like that. I wasn't where I was going with this. Yeah, 3,800 seniors died in Canada. So you can look up hashtag CANPOLI or hashtag ONPOLI. You will find all sorts. I'm sure you'll find. Look for that and the word seniors. And what I find really interesting is all these fucking nursing homes, the private ones, are advertising for people to move in. They just killed 3,800 people, so they got all these vacancies.
and a number of them have required mechanical ventilation.
Dr. Klein says masks and social distancing in schools may not be
80% of our schools.
It's really incumbent on adults and older adolescents who are eligible for vaccination to get the vaccine.
The Delta variant is certainly more contagious than previous versions of the coronavirus. Whether it's more dangerous is still being studied. Sherry Preston, ABC News.
6 to 1.
Hi, I'm Cherry Tab, co-founder of the Herzig. Canadians feel threatened in their own communities. The government of Canada is taking action to help keep Canadians safe by banning assault-style firearms, strengthening gun control laws, and targeting gang violence and illegal firearms trafficking. By working together, we can reduce gun violence. A message from the government of Canada.
If you have pain.
Jesus. Okay, so in the backdrop of that, 80% of our schools, I believe it's the public schools in Ontario, however we got 4 school boards and 15 million fucking people here, but 80% of the schools do not have mechanical ventilation systems. Yeah, that's. They only came out, I believe it was a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and said that they're going to provide. They set aside a certain amount of money, whatever, to purchase a HEPA filter for every classroom, which I've been bitching about for like a year. I have seen the only ones I've experienced with are the Honeywell. These fans are Honeywell. The thermostats, digital ones I've bought, non-programmable, were Honeywell. All those things work perfectly because they're a defense contractor. They have to find a way to take things they invented for the military and then use them to make money. This is where the carpet bombing timer from World War II became the automatic washing machine timer in the 50s. You all bought a washing machine. They didn't need carpet bombing timers, but they did need to sell washing machines. I think I just dropped half of my thought, but I can't. I really wanted to light this, but so we got like 5 minutes.
Where are you?
Okay, so granted I was tuning between 2 stations, but how many times did we hear the weather? How many minutes were devoted to the weather? Nothing about wildfires, nothing about droughts, very little practical information about viruses. Get a vaccine. The numbers are up. Get a vaccine. But we're reopening. The border's open. You see why my head's fucked up?
Hey, there you are. How does it feel to know you only have a few more seconds left to live?
They were just telling us about some. Was there not a shooting or something? Okay, on Friday they told us I think it was 2 teenagers got picked up for doing like 12.5 armed robberies or some shit. Oh dear, it scrolled up and then down. What just happened? Oh, damn it. Yeah, shortwave would be interesting to pick up. I've been doing the alternative, the modern alternative, which is the internet radio, or whatever you want to call it, but that happens to be the name of the app. And the app is fucked. Whatever internet service it needs to get the feeds to click to the URLs for the stations doesn't work anymore. There's no way to enter them manually, so I'm going to have to figure out a new app for that. I'm sort of trying to pick up what's useful from the broadcast media and catch a recording of it, because anytime they say anything useful, you'll hear the story, and then later in the day, if you tell your friend, yeah, they said this on the radio, and all your friends go, I didn't hear that, and they won't repeat the story. They told us that this Black North thing, they went around asking that, I guess it's supposed to be business grants and loans for Black-owned businesses, which Trudeau announced last year, still hasn't done. And the banks the retail banks that are supposed to be associated with this don't know what's going on either. So they announced this program last year, all sorts of money, and they ran that story like once. Yeah, that's something I've been interested in doing. I never actually set one up, but setting up like a live feed straight to some sort of scanner or something. For example, Toronto Police radios, which unfortunately they spent I think it was 9,000 Canadian dollars a piece to equip the entire force with digitally encrypted radios for some reason that they never really justified to us.
I never catch cold feet when I hold heat. We roll deep in the triple black dark tenant OG. I catch a bag 3 o'clock in the morning. On the block all alone and put a clock through his dome. Tell him give it up quick, you get wit. Don't try to get slick or I'ma let this 4/5 spit and leave your shit split. Frick, it ain't nothing decent about me. A true thug for real, you can ask the recent about me. A rap junkie, don't try to play me like some funky. Tooth be chunky, pockets hungry, attitude grumpy. Mad niggas be frontin' a lot. Poppin' mad shit, trying to be something they not. Your faggot ass better stick to dancing. Don't even look at me, I might break your jaw just for glancing. That's right, in 97 Harlem kids is blowing. But we don't trip, we'll let a bitch starve till her ribs is showing. a divine mastermind to turn nickels to dimes, authentic, genuine, that's out to shine. The cool cat, the true Mac, the school rap. Chickens be like, who that? I be doing my thing, kid. Do that. Front and I'm beyond that. I roll with brothers ready for combat. All for eye-to-eye contact with skills, G. Yo, it's ill, C for real, B. Ain't no barbecue, niggas better stop trying to grill me. Sit dead, style to my essence. Got niggas stressing my style, feels like caresses. So question, tough type, the clutch mic. It's a positive upright. I'm now, I don't give a fuck type. Expose the facts, you know that has to go to last astrological. Like the signs in the zodiac and rap you off the stack.
It is, I know the next. Oh, what happened? What did I do? Did I break it? The next show that comes up on this station, this woman's the only one that might talk about Trudeau and the army, which is huge right now.
Word up, my style's tighter than a fat bitch, and the capsule surprise you. It's not wise to decide me when I operate smooth sailing like Ron Isaac. Gotta do my thing, word up. Time to balance, gotta stick like
Prime Minister who refused to close the borders of COVID hotspots at the very beginning of the pandemic, who effectively facilitated the entry into Canada of the virus, when other countries like in East Asia immediately shut their borders. In January and February of last year, Minister Hadji was arguing to keep them open as long as she could, even from the worst hotspots in the world. She still hasn't
And this
taken
is why I make these videos, because I would have to go check the video to remember who said what.
The Trudeau government's the last. I should criticize any province for how it handles the pandemic, but hello, welcome to pre-election mudslinging. Alex Pearson with you on this Monday, August the 9th.
If you're going to go on about how Trudeau doesn't want an election, okay, well,
And of course, welcome to.
I think he already stole all the money he needs for the next 3 generations. I don't think he cares.
Right across the border for the first time in well over a year. Remember, President Biden promised that they'd have COVID beaten by July 4th weekend, and yet you look at their numbers, it's not even the case numbers, it's the hospitalizations.
I thought they promised to have vaccines.
Backwards at warp speed. So I've been hoping to go visit my sister in Connecticut in 2 weeks. I haven't seen her in 2 years, but who knows if that's going to happen. You know, will the borders close again? I don't know what's going to happen, so that's up in the air. And of course, my vacation seems to be timed out perfectly for the writ to drop.
So much okay, but it burns through batteries.
Private meeting with the Trudeau government today to sort out the details on how an election
all the construction
can be
sites
held
use it.
Safely.
Because they only broadcast a certain
But
distance.
if
It's
we're
perfect.
heeding with the pro-lockdown
And I hear little kids and grandmothers talking in other languages. I don't know what they're
easing
saying.
any restrictions at all is apparently reckless. So I assume that would include an election, right? But no, still the running date, if you're in a pool for a bet, is that he'll stroll over to the Governor General on August 16th and say, please, I can't make this work. I need an election. And then, of course, this morning we heard some surprising news. 3 Liberal MPs, all very kind of high profile, have dropped out of the running, which is extremely last minute if we're dropping the writ next week. One MP is dealing with health issues. But Will Amos, remember that guy? He's the guy that did the full Monty for a Zoom parliament, and then he got caught peeing in a cup during another Zoom parliament.
Check those hashtags.
I don't know, maybe politics is too distracting for his voyeuristic ways. But he's just going to focus.
Technically, it's exhibitionism.
Adam Vaughan decided to call it quits. This was very surprising, because this is a very, very safe seat for Trudeau, is this downtown Toronto Spadina riding. And a lot of people,
the whole city voted Liberal last year.
Go and take a shot at the mayor's seat in the next municipal election, but late this afternoon he says, nope, I'm done. 15 years in politics and I am done.
Good.
So why he waited so long to announce this would be pretty odd, because now they've got to find a candidate like ASAP. I don't know, like Mark Carney? I don't know, but they've got to find a candidate very fast, which tells me maybe there's more at play here. He's been on the backbenches ever since he joined this government, and maybe it was just the writing was on the wall. He wasn't going to ever go anywhere but the backbenches. Maybe he decided, hey, I'm done.
I'm done. Because politics is hard. It takes a lot out of your family, takes a lot out of life. And unless there's something in it, like a cabinet posting, can't be all that exciting. But no matter when the election's called, it is getting riskier by the day for Trudeau. He's got this obsession of getting a majority government, and he's going to force voters to the polls in what really could be the height of the Delta-driven wave 4. This is what all the experts are warning against. They're saying this is timing's not great. So if it's so outrageous for Albertans to, lift restrictions, why is it not equally as outrageous to hold an election? I find it odd how those calling this next wave a dire threat, they just don't seem to be bothered by this.
No, because they're going to tell you have to have like an Android 12, 6G cell phone.
It has been for weeks. The politicians don't even hide it. Aaron O'Toole was campaigning in Belleville today, and of course was asked about the non-existent election that's already underway, and he said whether he wants it or not, he's ready to go.
My biggest concern right now,
the most awkward part
is the potential fourth wave of COVID-19. The highly impacted sectors, including tourism, small businesses here in the Quinte region that are struggling. We need to help them. We shouldn't be rushing to an election. Mr. Trudeau always seems to put his own self-interest ahead of the interest of Canadians. As leader of the opposition in a pandemic in a minority parliament, I've always had to be ready. We will be ready, but we really do think the health and economic security of Canadians must come first.
So the opposition are going to make very, very sure that the narrative's baked right in that any election called, not on them. They're going to make sure it's parked right at Justin Trudeau's feet. But I don't think
so. Am I still the volunteer street sweeper and garbage picker up? By the way,
that comes along.
If I don't mention it,
for months they've been out dumping money into
pretty much every day
all over the country, and of course the mudslinging is already well underway with Alberta once again being used as the predictable punching bag. And I find it very rich, to see who is taking jabs. On Friday, Patty Hajdu penned this letter criticizing Alberta's decision to lift all COVID restrictions, calling it, quote, unnecessary and a risky gamble. I mean, who is she to talk?
I can hook up your pay cable, I guess.
I mean, I can't explain why the Trudeau government's been given such good grades for their handling of this pandemic. There's more than enough evidence showing that they were the ones who dropped the ball from the start. In fact, they dropped every ball they had. And it's well documented that, this government got rid of our world-renowned pandemic surveillance warning system. It's very well documented that public health got rid of all the scientists and filled it with a bunch of suits.
What about the two Chinese people in the nationals in the microvirus, whatever the fuck it is,
they had no idea what to do. It's also well known that Hajdu and her boss Trudeau refused to shut borders to travel, allowing thousands and thousands of people to come in from hot zones like Wuhan, like Iran.
Wuhan is not a hot zone right now. Actually,
we also know they got things like masking advice. For months we were told, you can travel,
like a year
you
with
can go to
no
China.
cases.
Don't wear a mask. Don't wear a mask here. That's more dangerous. That's what they're telling us for months.
November.
So we know that at every chance the Trudeau government had to act, it did not. It got caught flat-footed every step of the way. And so now Hajdu is taking shots at Alberta because Alberta's trying to get back to living some kind of normal life. I mean, it's laughable, if not just totally predictable, but it punctuates just how political this pandemic has become, where one province lifting restrictions is unnecessary and a risky gamble, yet it is safe enough for the Prime Minister to take us into an election that only he really wants. So just a bit rich that they can wag their finger at the one province that
they're incredibly rich. Did you not hear about the $1 billion scandal with the
political points?
What's bothering me, she's going on and on about Trudeau without getting into details of all these other things.
Unless, of course, that science comes out of Alberta. Then they just don't buy it.
No, they have 3.
And so the critics will cry that they've got grave concerns. It's reckless to reopen anything right now, they declare. And yet they stay silent for an election that really only serves Trudeau's ego.
It's okay, but can you tell us something?
Nonetheless.
Back in 8.5 minutes, what?
Busy show tonight. We're going to talk about this and much more. We're also going to talk about the divide in the medical community. Those who seem to they want to stay in lockdown. I mean,
they're not in debate. They all say the same thing.
They can go on forever, but it can't go on forever. we do actually have to move forward and start living lives.
They said that during the plague too.
So we'll talk with one doctor who's speaking out saying we're having the wrong conversation and we need to start really changing that. We'll also talk about the Olympics all wrapped up. Of course, Canada did a great job, but now the focus shifts to Beijing in a matter of months. And I don't think we should be going. I think we should be boycotting, no question. And new polling shows Canadians actually don't feel we should be going to those games either. So what will we do? We will talk about that and much more, but of course, the big story is the UN predicting climate change. The targets will not come anywhere near Paris climate targets. So
hey,
the bad
I
news,
still haven't heard
course,
anything
will
about
be
that diplomat getting killed in the Congo.
Out of our pockets. The good news will be that not one of these experts has yet to be right about the world coming to an end. So we'll talk about the report, what it means, and about the fear
about the point of no return, eh?
Expect to hear in the coming months, if not years.
But, you don't realize you hit it till after.
This will fuel the debate over climate change. We'll talk about that next. Stay with us here. Alex Pearson on point, taking it into this Monday, getting it behind us. This is Global News Radio.
A Chorus Entertainment Company. Remember that. Don't ever forget that these stations are entertainment companies. Now, I'm not sure where I took these. Did I put these? So I don't think I would take them from the radio and put them in the. No, I don't know. Let's see how long this lasts. And there's nothing. And you're not going to see it too clearly, but it is scanning.
You've got large numbers of staff. You've got leaders' tours that are mapped out. You've got ground wars and air wars and signs.
Parties also have to make sure they have candidates nominated and vetted for all 338 ridings. Brad says with a fourth wave of COVID on the horizon, there are more uncertainties with this campaign. That should lead to parties producing more contingency plans and developing better strategies to reach voters due to fewer in-person events. He says the campaigns will be a work in progress until voting day because no party, not even the government, will be fully prepared for what the campaign will hold. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
In 3 minutes for your financial well-being. Listen for the MNP.
If I was you, it'd be, let's see, 3 minutes would be 30 minutes the second thing. How much do they get for 30 seconds on the radio? Get a few grand for that at least, eh? At the worst, you're getting a few thousand, eh?
640 Toronto.
Marineland is now open for another season of
So, I'll tell you in a second.
Pack a picnic or enjoy a meal at the Hungry Bear. Bring your bathing suits and cool off at the Polar Splash Pad. There are so many safe, fun things to see and do, including 2 new rides. Visit the park this August and your single-day ticket will be upgraded to a Seasons Pass fun card for free. Buy your tickets or learn more online at marineland.ca for your day of outdoor safe family fun.
What's happening to my screen now? It's bleeding.
Introducing the LCBO.
So they're getting sued or charged or something because they're being cruel to their whales or some shit like that. So everybody don't love Marineland.
Now you can choose something light for a weekend at home, like the new low-sugar White Claw Watermelon Seltzer, only available at the LCBO. It pairs perfectly with your favorite lounge chair. Find the whole selection of summer refreshment at the LCBO. Visit lcbo.com for home delivery or for same-day pickup.
You hear that, Rick?
Restaurants, our breads have risen to every occasion.
Does that not sound just like that version of the Party in the USA or whatever, or Party in the CIA? Weird Al's the original writer of that. In case you didn't know, you got to tell kids that, even though you know it's not true. So they don't have enough money to put mechanical ventilation systems in the schools, but they could shell out dough all day to advertise. So if you're not from Ontario, you don't realize LCBO and the beer store. The beer stores, technically, it's a consortium of companies, but that's created by the provincial government. LCBO, Liquor Control Board of Ontario. So it's a store you walk into and hand them money, but it's a government store. It's like, that's why we don't call the corner store a liquor store, because even now they don't sell even beer. There used to be tobacco stores. I think they fucking completely. I got no pigment. That's like fucking Mylar.
Hey, do you seniors on your own home?
You can't believe it.
So this woman, Alex Pearson or whatever, she, I'm so sorry if I got it wrong. I'm pretty sure it's the proper name. Because there's On Point and The Point, and one of them is this show here, and one of them is a show on CRI, China Radio International. She covers a lot of interesting shit about the military misconducts and weird investigations and things, stories that are there, but they won't release information. And also, not just, she spent 10 minutes ragging about an election, okay, but normally she gets into the nuts and bolts of all the shit Trudeau did, for example.
It's on us. On Select.
Instead of just saying he's going to lose the election or whatever, she normally give all sorts of details as to why. But she's been saying that for months. So.
Reliable 5G network.
Again, why it's one of the reasons I started recording this shit.
Information with Alan Carter and Foreign Answer. And your weather with meteorologist Anthony Farnell. Weeknights on Global News at 5:30 and 6. And download the Global TV app to get Global News for free anytime.
Is this Mr. Roboto? Oh, I was real close. I was real close. I was real close.
Welcome back to On Point with Alex Pearson on Global News Radio.
I hope that this can be a wake-up call and that it really gives perspective and that it once again can be a reminder that the climate crisis has not gone away. It's only escalating and it's only growing more intense by the hour. I expect them to go out and have big speeches or like press releases or posts on social media where they say the climate crisis is very important and we are doing everything that we can, and then they will brag about what they have been doing, even though what we consider to be climate action or what they consider to be climate action today is almost only creative carbon accounting or setting vague distant targets without actually taking action now.
There you go. Greta's right about that. Politicians will fly all over the planet, they'll take our money and solve nothing. But she's referring to this report put out by the UN, which talks about what could happen in the next 100 years if we don't start living in yurts. And predictably, it delivers the apocalyptic warning that this should be a massive wake-up call for world governments to cut emissions, because we're nowhere near Paris climate targets. They warn that our world's going to get hotter, the seas will rise to biblical levels, and for the first time they say they've got enough evidence to fully place the blame at mankind's feet. And they say it's also no longer a hypothetical. We have to do something drastic or bad things will happen. Even though bad things, they don't generally seem to come true, but nonetheless, they guarantee it this time. Laurie Goldstein, of course, columnist for the Toronto Sun and also some media papers. I know you read all these reports, so I thought, who will know the dire circumstances with this report? Laurie will. What's your take?
I agree with what Greta Thunberg said. This is a classic example of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, which is a sort of, definition of insanity. There have been, this is leading up to the 26th international meeting of the UN Climate Convention on Climate Change. It's going to happen in Scotland in November. Years ago in 2015, it was Paris, and before that, it was Copenhagen. And prior to these meetings that, of world leaders that emit enough carbon dioxide to choke an elephant, these reports come out so that everybody can be hysterical. And then they'll go to their meeting. They'll all fly in with private jets and stay at 5-star hotels. And it'll run over time as it did in the last 3 of them. And then they'll come out at the last minute saying,
why is it 5 stars? Because they fly in the bottled water. Oh.
And meanwhile, emissions go up and up and up. And it's odd that they would blame us. And, the whole language of blame that the media participates in, that, okay, so what you're saying is that developed countries are at fault for trying to improve the standards of living of their citizens. developing countries are at fault for trying to do the same thing that we in the developed world did a century ago, which was to use fossil fuels to power ourselves out of the third world and into the first world. What this is all about is
Red China into this somehow.
Saying, well, not first world, but people who are all up in arms about this are people in the first world telling people in the third world basically, no, you can't do what we did. You can't use your fossil resources to improve your standard of living. Yes, we did it, but we did so much of it that we ruined the climate for everybody. So the whole idea of blame is absurd. In the first place, isn't blame. This isn't like we're all running around with oil wells in our backyards, having it gush out of the yards.
A long time ago when I was really little, one of my parents put something on top of a lamp to dim the light a bit, not realizing it could catch fire, and it caught fire. And while my aunt dragged me out of the room I was in, they were having an argument over who started the fire. I'm not making that up.
I think most people are kind of tired of this perpetual crying wolf. The fact is,
especially when you don't call out the wolf, because the real wolf and the real culprit is China, which continuously builds coal plants. And unless you're going to go after them,
that's not the biggest problem with China.
But you look at this, and they're saying in this report that this is the death knell for fossil fuel, and yet you got guys like Mark Carney running around the world, making huge investments with Brookfield. And what are they investing in? Fossil fuels. I mean, it's great for him to make all this money in it. It's just the rest of us must change.
Well, look, the only people who think that the age of fossil fuels is dying are it's just not true. It's just not true. At best, there will be a gradual decline in fossil fuel use. But it is not disappearing anytime soon. In Canada, for example, in the last few months, it's the recovery of the oil sector that had Canada achieve a trade surplus. This is in recent weeks. Anyway, the column I'm writing about tomorrow on all this is let's take a totally different view of all this for once. Let's look at optimism, and let's not wallow in what a UK liberal think tank called years ago climate porn. And climate porn is things like the media, and a lot of us in the media are responsible for this. We take the worst case scenario that's proposed by the IPCC and say it's going to happen. Well, no.
Or we take the image of the dying polar bear that actually is.
Yeah. The worst case scenario is the worst case scenario. It's probably not going to happen. And we ignore the advancements that we've made. And like for one example, look, deaths because of climate disasters are horrible, no matter when they occur. But the reality is because of improvements in human technology, there are 90% fewer people dying today from climate change than there were in 1900. And there are a lot more people. So that, that's one of many metrics you can look at where, no, actually, life is improving around the planet. It's not getting worse. And one of the reasons is because of the use of fossil fuels. Now, going forward, there are a lot of things we can do. What I've written about quite often is that the single most effective thing we could do is to replace coal-fired electricity with nuclear power and natural gas. Reason being that nuclear power doesn't emit greenhouse gas emissions, and natural gas emits at half the carbon intensity of coal. Now, that's something we could do. Canada could be a leader in that.
That's not the problem with coal.
We have vast natural resources of natural gas. We have trouble getting it to the rest of the world because we can't build any pipelines.
No, because you can't sell it on boats.
We have a record of reliable and safe nuclear power. If there was a global effort to, rather than just bash China all the time, and they certainly deserve being bashed, but to give them new technologies that could help them get off coal-fired electricity and help the developing world get off, that would solve the problem. If we could replace global use of coal to fire electricity, which is now most common in the developing world, not our world. That's why most countries
not our world. You always said that.
Or have stopped.
Not the words.
If we could do that, we could solve this problem. We wouldn't have we wouldn't have to be hysterical. We wouldn't have to frighten children. We wouldn't have to feel as adults that we're paralyzed by the enormity of the problem. We could actually do something. But what
I'm up against the clock, Lori. So
private activists oppose the use of natural gas and the use of nuclear power. They want wind and solar, which cannot provide the base load power to the electricity grid that we need, and is in fact, it's a guarantee. You use wind and solar power to try to solve this problem, you will drive the developed world into further poverty.
I am totally up against the clock, Lori. I'm totally out of time. I totally agree with you. They could also Zoom these meetings.
Exactly.
All right, I gotta let you go on that. You can read about this, of course, in tomorrow's Toronto Sun by Lori Goldstein. Your news at the top of the hour. We've got a busy show, and we'll set you up for that in just a second here on Point on Global News Radio.
You're standing in Freshco. You're looking at all the delicious, fresh local produce. Of investor concern regarding the COVID-19 situation, cases are up. That could crimp economic growth. It could hurt the price of oil. Gold fell more than $36 to $1,726 the ounce. On Wall Street, the Dow down 106 points to 35,101. S&P fell 4. The Nasdaq, though, up 24 points, but were some pockets of strength in the tech space. Tesla up 2.1% on an upgraded Jefferies. Robinhood was up 3.3%. Coinbase surged 8.6% ahead of earnings tomorrow. After the bell, AMC into the top and bottom line beat, taking that stock higher. And reports say CP Rail is planning a new higher bid for Kansas City Southern. Canadian dollar 79.43 cents US. At the Business Center, I'm Richard Southern. Who knew that the hardest part of being an adult was...
It was amazing.
What did I type already? Yeah. So there's. Oh, shit! I was eating cookies instead of rolling a joint. If I press play, what do I do? Nothing's gonna happen. The lighting's not usually this good. It's a little too bright. I don't know. Wow, this is some dead silence. That's. So this station, apparently even their live broadcast is a minute off the clock. So you tune in at the top of the hour, you get a minute. Oh, is it working? You get a minute of commercials instead of. Press that one more time. To the odd or even, right? Yeah, so the one is a Uniden, made in Vietnam. The one thing, this screen is sort of curved. Whatever this plastic material is, I don't know what that is. Nice and thick and clear. It's very easy to read in real life, but it's very difficult to get a clean shot of it. If I could just get that to where there's light on. Yeah, I see. Oh, there we go. Oh, there's a curved top and bottom the same way. And the alarm's not working.
Was
401 through Mississauga from approaching Mavis to past Mississauga Road. That's partly volume, but also an earlier crash we had at Winston Churchill, which is now gone. Also slow on the 401 in both directions between Dixon and the 400. Also eastbound slows from the Allen towards Leslie, as well as through Kennedy, and it's easing off by the minute. Also Don Valley Parkway northbound a bit busy from Eglinton to past Lawrence, and a crash in town to watch out for at Birchmount and Lawrence too. Drive into your locally owned and operated Mr. Lube for warranty-approved oil changes, tires, batteries, filters, and fluids. Mr. Lube, proudly Canadian since 1976. I'm Ari Yerbenovich, Global News Radio 640 Toronto Chopper Traffic.
Don't just know the story, understand it. This is CFMJ Global News Radio 640 Toronto, a Chorus Entertainment Company. You're listening to Global News Radio. This is Global News at 7 o'clock.
Good evening from the Global News Desk. I'm Darren Boland. Canadian land border crossings reopened to travelers from the U.S. this morning. For the first time in more than 500 days, Americans can make non-essential trips to this country, and visitors who are fully vaccinated and with no recent COVID tests no longer have to quarantine. Global Sean O'Shea witnessed lineups of traffic streaming into Canada Monday.
Hold on, they have to have a recent negative test.
Niagara Falls, bumper to bumper all day long. Some sat in the queue for 2 hours. It's welcome traffic that border cities haven't seen in a long time.
Typically, 25% of the tourists come from the U.S. and they represent 50% of the revenue. So we've taken a huge hit with the border closed.
It's been devastating. We've been closed for 509 days.
The duty-free store here, seeing some life again.
It's just wonderful to finally see us open and our staff finally getting employed again.
Some Canadians were among those celebrating. David Layton's daughter had been boarding in Buffalo with her swim team.
She's had a somewhat normal teenage life the last 3 months with her swimming and her friends and her coaches.
Normally, Evie Layton would cross the border several times a week for training. That's still a long way off.
You can't do just day trips with the restrictions the way that they are right now.
Between testing and the non-essential travel to the U.S. by land crossing isn't possible yet. What is possible? The opportunity for Americans to take trips here again. Trips once taken for granted.
Well, business groups in the province are urging Premier Doug Ford to consider a COVID-19 vaccine certificate system as a way to avoid another lockdown. The call comes as COVID-19 infections appear to be on the rise again in Ontario, with 325 new cases reported today, following more than 400 yesterday. While Ford has refused to consider a vaccine certificate system for non-essential activities, saying he doesn't want a split society. But both the Ontario Chamber of Commerce and Canadian Federation of Independent Business say businesses need to see the plan of what happens in the face of rising cases. Well, you've heard it time and time again from health officials to get vaccinated against COVID-19. Today, that message is coming from York Region's top doctor, and his call for arms is backed with new data on the potential impact to families and loved ones.
There's been a surge of COVID-19 cases in York Region, including a significant increase among children under the age of 12. We're told the source of infection often involves unvaccinated parents or family members.
Many of them are actually getting them as household contacts of individuals who haven't been vaccinated and have come down with COVID-19.
Health Canada has not yet approved the COVID-19 vaccine for young children. And because of that, York's medical officer of health, Dr. Corinne Kurji, says there's a social responsibility for eligible populations to get their shots if they haven't already.
They have to get the vaccine, not just to protect themselves, but also the children around them. They've got to protect others around them as well.
Brianna Carnegie, Global News.
Toronto police have identified 2 men killed in a weekend shooting in the city's Kensington Market area. The incident occurred early Sunday morning. Police say 27-year-old Anthony Dang from Markham and 32-year-old Z Tan from Richmond Hill were found dead at the scene, while 2 others were taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries.
It appeared the 4 men were socializing at the time. This occurred outside, and it appears that 2 men did approach the group. They both had firearms, and they began firing into the group of men who were socializing. We don't know right now if this is a targeted investigation or not.
While details on suspects have yet to be released, investigators are asking those with information or dashcam footage of the area to come forward. The United Nations says a new report out today on climate must sound the death knell for coal and fossil fuels. The report indicates Earth is heating up so quickly due to human activity that temperatures in about a decade will blow past an acceptable level of warming. Global's Heather Yerkes West has more on this.
A more than 3,000-page report from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says the Earth is getting warmer, and we are already paying the price. For Canada, the report projects reduction in 46 days with snowfall in all but northern Canada, a consistent signal toward an increase in duration and intensity of droughts, a clear increase in the intensity and frequency of hot extremes, and future increases in fire weather.
Basically, the path we're on now is one that threatens all of the systems that sustain us. So whether that be breathable air, drinkable water, predictable climate, all of that is at risk.
Well, opening round of competition continuing tonight at the National Bank Open Tennis Tournaments. In women's single action out of Montreal, Quebec's Leila Fernandez is scoring off against Britain's Harriet Dart. That match is about to get underway, and later tonight, Toronto's Rebecca Marino takes on American Madison Keys. Meanwhile, in men's singles action out of Toronto, Vancouver's Vasek Pospisil will face American Tommy Paul. And Toronto FC says Javier Perez, who took over as interim head coach after Chris Armas was fired July 4th, will remain in charge for the rest of the season. The MLS club did not reveal Perez's future after that in a two-sentence statement Monday, announcing it was removing the interim tag for the remainder of the 2021 season. And under Perez, Toronto has lost just once in its last 7 games. Download our Global News Sky Tracker app and have weather alerts that is sent right to your phone. Checking your forecast from the Global News Weather Center, increasing cloud cover tonight alongside the risk of an overnight thunderstorm. The temperature tonight dropping only slightly with expected lows of between 20 and 23 across the region. I'm Darren Boland, and this is Global News.
This is On Point with Alex Pearson on Global News Radio.
Coming up, home ownership. Daily headline. But opportunity, of course, is slipping out of reach for millions in this country. Will it be an election issue? It should be.
Can we talk about homelessness?
Especially with rumblings that this government could actually try to tax our biggest investment should they get reelected. How do you feel about the airlines making cuts to those overnight flights overseas that would have only one pilot in the cockpit?
You can sort of make it one, but it's not inherently an investment.
It's coming. A lot of people would say, what could go wrong? And if we're to believe the science, why is Alberta's Medical Officer of Health getting so much blowback? Well, because there are many who seem to want lockdown measures here to stay in place forever. We'll have that conversation when we get back 10 to 8, but let's get you to the Employment Law Show with John Scholes and John Pincus. I'm Alex Pearson. This is Global News Radio.
The following is a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of or otherwise represent the advertiser. The opinions expressed therein are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio.
38 candidates. So far, Conservatives have 85% in place, Liberals are at 70%, and the NDP is less than half. Dwayne Brad, a political scientist with Mount Royal University, tells me each party will see their strategies as a work in progress until voting day.
There's a lot of moving parts, and nobody's going to be ready completely.
But by now, parties should have finalized their messaging to voters and their key election promises. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
And we'll check gas next.
The news
is always changing.
now more
Weathered the storm.
We honor that shared love you have for one another.
And although the world still hasn't fully opened up, your hearts have.
Tie a string of diamonds around her finger as a reminder of your devotion.
And as a way to symbolize another chapter in your eternal love story. At only $13.99, the Forever Anniversary Band sparkles with artisan-treated diamonds.
Much like your loving connection, the Forever Anniversary Band is timeless. Spence
Pretty sure I could get like a lot of Neva for that.
Scarborough, and Mississauga.
Now, 680 News gas price update. No change at midnight. It's rolling around 138.9.
Let's talk about a classic. McDonald's Quarter Pounder. Well, did you hear? It's now got a sweet and smoky twist. Get your hands on the new maple barbecue and bacon Quarter Pounder.
Vous avez mentionné l'expression vomiting là, dans votre expression, et j'ai pas compris le reste. Et donc, ne devriez-vous pas présumer, vous ne devriez pas présumer du bilinguisme de toutes et de tous, nous dit Madame Pinon. Ben, c'est très juste. Et donc, je vais revenir là-dessus parce qu'on parlait de l'entraînement des astronautes. Et vous savez que quand on apprend à évoluer en apesanteur, ben, on n'a pas le luxe d'aller dans les grandes paraboles. Donc, imaginez-vous un avion qui pointe le nez vers le haut. Et là, les moteurs sont au fond. Et à un moment donné, le pilote va faire piquer l'avion du nez. Et donc, pendant quelques secondes, on a ces effets d'apesanteur dans les avions. Et donc, le surnom qu'on a donné, Mme Pilon, à ces avions-là, ce sont les Bob Comet. Donc, that's getting taken care of. Just a minor slowdown through this zone. If you're in the express, everything's free and clear. Westbound 401, some volume as you approach the 412. Looks pretty good. And then from Mavis Express and Collectors through to approaching Mississauga Road. Northbound DVP 404, no delays any longer. It's a good drive. Watch out for constructions being set up on the SEV 400 beginning at Teston. It usually goes down to about King. You've got a left lane blocked off. Toronto-bound QBW, Burlington Skyway maintenance, 2 left lanes are closed off. And that's looking good at the moment. Are you looking for a new career? Vita HR Services is hiring over 100 G-Class delivery drivers in Whitby, Cambridge, Hamilton, and London. Apply in less than 60 seconds at gdriver.ca.
Oh, really? 60 seconds?
21. Here's the forecast.
That's the best way to pick people, isn't it?
Partly cloudy tonight, down to 20. Humidex 30 as you wake up in the morning, and that Humidex will be 41 in the afternoon. We do have morning.
You said 42. You said
rain and very strong winds and the risk of hail as they come through.
She said 42 earlier.
A couple more spotty late day storms, but these ones will really target areas to the north and especially up around Georgian Bay. Those ones could be severe late in the day. Wednesday, mainly cloudy, rain storms and 32 degrees, Humidex 42. Thursday, humidity falls late in the day. We'll still have that high of 32 degrees and some storms expected again. Tonight, down to low of 23 degrees.
A few clouds in downtown Toronto, 29. It feels like 38. The side effects of Pfizer's booster shot appear to be similar to the ones that many have felt after getting their second dose. Here's 680 Stuart McGinn.
Pfizer is still seeking approval for its booster shot close to home, but in Israel, where COVID cases have continued to surge, over 500,000 residents have received a third shot. And according to a preliminary study conducted by health officials, the side effects of the booster are very similar to those from the second dose. 88% of the 4,500 people surveyed said they felt similar or slightly better than after dose number 2. Just over 30% reporting the arm they got the shot being sore, but 15% reported other issues like tiredness, aches, or a fever, and just 1% dealt with more serious side effects like chest tightness or difficulty breathing. Pfizer has maintained the booster will protect against COVID variants, while evidence shows the effectiveness of its 2 doses wears off slightly after 6 months. I'm Stuart McGinn.
What makes the perfect workout? Being able to ride, lift, and stretch in one place with motivating instructors.
Y'all look so good out there, Peloton.
Classes that always work around your busy summer schedule.
Push, Peloton, you go.
Souris-moi, comme on me l'a si mauvais geste de ton talent, sans pour t'aimer, mieux que le bébé, la bouffe. Tu es ma tosala kanisa maloba tolingana engeye moko ya wakelaka mwasi na mopanzi ya mobali ya misa bana mona mpona yo nine oyanga ebidamu mama na yo ebonina oui Carlos c'est toi voici mon cœur à Nice c'est toi ma vie d'amour vie d'amour. Souris-moi, comme on est la crise. Mathieu Chirera, le noir de Miami, le tombeau de béton, Annie Dembo. La mikangana motambo ya bolingo, molanga muna yonagi, salanga nganya salina tondima, mbuza moko yeteni ya binanga, musika na yo nazokokati, yo moko mesanisanga mpene na yo, kokende te okotikanga moko, na susi, isoli, foni, papa Laurent Lemba, Emma Salisi, ine motema eza nango bolingo, olete nzinga, eza mapete ndenge nalelaka yo bayo, eza bolingo nzambe moto atinda boye, olamour ezangelemi soki bakolinga yo, soki balela yo La capitale à Chinguette, Germaine Kalima,
Zero through 7, huh? Oh, what the fuck did I just do? Oh, okay, right. Come on.
It's been called a code red for humanity. During a stop today in Belleville, Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole told reporters that climate change is an urgent threat facing Canada and the world.
That's why in April, we launched the most ambitious environmental climate change plan ever before an election. We will meet our Paris targets. We will reduce emissions, but we will also get people working. We'll have an economic recovery that our 5-point Canada Recovery Plan will drive. We can do both.
The report has raised renewed questions about Canada's climate plan, with the suggestion that countries should end all new fossil fuel exploration and production and shift fossil fuel subsidies into renewable energy.
Ooh.
As the number of pediatric COVID cases increases in Florida, school districts in the state are going against its governor's mask mandate prohibition.
Florida, now with the highest number of confirmed
Mandate
pediatric COVID
prohibition.
patients in the country. Some of the largest school districts in the state defying Governor Ron DeSantis' ban on masks, instituting their own mask mandates for students, but still allowing parents to opt out.
Florida now accounts for 20% of all cases of coronavirus across the U.S. An alleged victim of deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein has filed a civil lawsuit today against Prince Andrew.
In her lawsuit, Virginia Giuffre accused Prince Andrew of sexually abusing her at Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan home and other locations while she was under 18. Her attorney said Giuffre is committed to trying to avoid situations where rich and powerful people escape any accountability. 20 years ago, the lawsuit said Prince Andrew's wealth, power, position, and connections enabled him to abuse a frightened, vulnerable child. Prince Andrew has denied any sexual contact with Giuffre. Her lawsuit sought unspecified damages. Aaron Katursky, ABC News, New York.
And next month, Moderna will become the third vaccine available down under.
The Australian government has given Moderna the green light, joining Pfizer and AstraZeneca. Prime Minister Scott Morrison.
We will have 10 million of the Moderna doses arriving before the end of this year. The 1 million doses will arrive next month and will go for 6.
The country is playing catch-up ball. As it stands, only 22% of adults there have been fully vaccinated. Tom Rivers, ABC News of the Foreign Desk.
Traffic and weather next.
Let's shop better at tsc.ca.
People think they're hackers.
I'm hoping to use this opportunity to enjoy nature and find myself. It has been my dream.
Others decided to come by road. A graduate student surnamed Zhang drove from Guangzhou to Lhasa in the company of 3 friends. The trip took them 13 days. We just want to experience the journey. It would be faster by train or by air. There are also a lot of beautiful sceneries along the way. It would be a pity to miss all those. On their second day in Lhasa, Zhang and her friends also took in a staple experience of any visit to Lhasa, that is to dress up in fancy traditional Tibetan costumes and have photographs taken at landmarks around the city. We want to try it. It's fun. All the girls want to dress up and look pretty and have fun. Although travelers are now required to have a negative COVID-19 test before they can be allowed to travel around the region, young people like Zhang said they're not particularly concerned by the requirement, adding that a negative test only makes them feel safer as they venture further afield. For the Beijing Hour, this is Fei Fei.
Coming up, a new warning from the UN on climate change.
The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour brings you an hour of comprehensive news and information from both China and
so yeah, things going up and down and up and down, but I don't care.
A mix of news, sports, and entertainment. In-depth analysis of the day's big stories, as well as the most comprehensive business of the day. The Beijing Hour. Beijing Hour. Your very own window to China and the rest of the world.
22 past the hour. The United Nations report is warning of the impact of human activities on global warming. It says the planet's warmed more than previously estimated. It reports the first major review of climate change in 8 years. Tony Waterman has more.
These scientists saying that every single region on the planet is now being impacted by climate change, and that things are going to get worse, that it's going to get warmer in some places, drier in some places, wetter in other places. These extreme weather events are going to become more severe, and they're going to become more frequent. Some of the effects of climate change, these scientists were saying, are going to be felt for hundreds, if not thousands of years. That's even if the world manages to reduce greenhouse gas emission. For the first time, these scientists are placing the blame squarely and indisputably, in their own words, on humans, the human activity, what we are doing, the burning of fossil fuels, the overuse of resources, the non-replenishment of resources. And this is something that in their last report back in 2013 hinted towards quite strongly, but didn't make that final link going forward. These global scientists also said that the world is likely to reach that 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold of temperature rise within the next 2 decades, even under the best case scenario taking place. This is that threshold that the world does not want to reach at all, does not want to breach that at all. The report also saying that not all hope is lost at this point, because if governments can manage to make very swift, very extreme policies, then there could be some sort of saving grace here.
It was Tony Waterman reporting.
Showing the edited,
the United States and Canada are being scorched by some of the most destructive wildfires in history. Edith Tyansen has a look.
This is how obsessive.
The largest wildfire currently raging in the United States is expanding.
Every time I look at the screen, it's going to freeze, and my neck's going to go like that, and my eyes are going to
has dropped from 35% to
You're still
only
using the kiddie porn chat room software.
Greenville, a town of about 1,000 people, was wiped out. It looks like a bomb went off. There's nothing left, said one of the residents.
Fucking idiot.
Authorities are assessing the damage in the area. Some residents are still unaccounted for. The Dixie Fire has so far destroyed at least 400 structures and continues to trigger more evacuations. A federal judge last Friday gave Pacific Gas and Electric, California's largest power company, 1 week to explain its role in potentially starting 2 fires that eventually merged. The utility said last month that a fuse blown from its power lines may have started the Dixie Fire. Across the border, Canada is also facing catastrophic fires. Nearly 30,000 square kilometers of Canadian wildlands have burned this year, more than twice the 20-year average for this time of the year.
That's 2 Ontarios.
And it's more than twice the area that has burned in the United States so far this year. Aside from ravaged towns and unhealthy air quality, the fires have long-term implications on the environment, as many of these forests used to have a high capacity to capture greenhouse gases and provide breeding grounds for migratory birds.
That was Edith Tyansen reporting. The New York State Assembly's Judiciary Committee is meeting behind closed doors as it considers drafting articles of impeachment against Governor Andrew Cuomo. The meeting comes days after an Attorney General's independent investigation found evidence that the governor sexually harassed 11 women. Committee Chair Charles Levine says they will review Cuomo's statements made to the AG and any further evidence that he may wish to submit.
We commend the Attorney General on her work and her agreement to provide relevant materials to this committee. The findings, the content of the report are deeply disturbing. We will review that report in detail, including the underlying evidence, and consider it together with this committee's own independent investigation.
I want to hear about Canada. That's why I tuned into Chinese Radio International.
Impeachable acts after the sexual harassment allegations surfaced in March. The committee is also investigating its administration's decision to withhold stats on COVID-19 deaths in nursing homes. In the impeachment process, the New York lawmakers are also looking into Cuomo's alleged use of staff to help with his $5 million book deal. A top aide to the New York governor has resigned amid the sexual harassment scandal that Andrew Cuomo is currently embroiled in. Melissa DeRosa, who had been one of Cuomo's most fierce defenders and strategists, announced her resignation on Sunday. She said in a statement that the past 2 years have been emotionally and mentally trying for her. So far, scores of Democrats, including President Joe Biden, have called on Cuomo to resign from office or face impeachment. Russia has barred a proportionate number of British citizens from entry in retaliation for British sanctions against Russians for alleged human rights violations and corruption. Moscow says the sanctioned are closely involved in anti-Russian activities, but it declined to disclose their names and how many people have been targeted. Since December of last year, Britain's imposed travel bans and asset freezes against 17 Russian individuals and a special rapid response team that's based in Chechnya. Beijing today, cloudy skies, 31 degrees Celsius for a high, a low of 22 overnight. Chongqing, we got some rainfall on the day in 32, a low of 27. Los is cloudy and 26 degrees, a low of 14. Hong Kong's getting showers on the day in 32 degrees, a low of 28. Over to North America and Washington, D.C. will be mostly sunny on Tuesday and 33 degrees Celsius. New York City is partly cloudy and 28. In Africa, Nairobi's getting scattered thunderstorms and 21 degrees. And finally to Oceania, Port Vila is getting some wind and 23 degrees Celsius. It's time for a short break. So far this hour, a report by each Chinese think tanks has declared that the U.S. response to COVID-19 is a failure. U.S. business groups are calling on President Biden to restart trade talks with China. And the United Nations report is warning of the impacts of human activities on global warming. Shane Bigham with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing.
Join the most popular Chinese language learning page on Facebook by searching for CRI Learn Chinese. It's a quick yet fun way to achieve your language goals. Start your free lessons now with unlimited videos, photos, and text tutorials on expressions and Chinese culture. CRI Learn Chinese Facebook page. The world opens with 你好.
The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour brings you an hour of comprehensive news and information from both China and the rest of the world. A mix of news, sports, and entertainment. In-depth analysis of the day's big stories, as well as the most comprehensive business of the day. The Beijing Hour. Beijing Hour. Your very own window to China and the rest of the world.
A million, a billion, or maybe a gazillion years ago, a giant split open an egg. Then came the lady giant who made people, and Mr. Curious, the bucket, Mr. Handyman, the Baron on the Train. This is our new season of Chinese folktales, and we will explore the ancient, mystical world together. Available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen.
When examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host, Shane Gibbon with you on this Tuesday morning. Still to come in business, rising prices in China, in sports, Chinese athletes returning home from the Tokyo Olympics, in culture and entertainment, and TV shows on the CPC's 100th anniversary are being aired now in Hong Kong. To contact us, you can email beijinghour@cri.com.cn. Now checking the day's headlines, the Chinese report says the United States has fared worse than any other country in its COVID response. Produced by 3 Chinese think tanks, it challenges some media outlets that rank the U.S. first in coping with the COVID-19 pandemic. The report also blames the U.S. government for politicizing the issue, adding that the U.S. failure to control the virus has intensified social rifts and increased discrimination against Asian Americans. Over 30 U.S. business groups are calling on President Joe Biden's administration to restart trade talks with China and cut tariffs on products. The groups representing retailers, chip makers, and farms say in a letter that the U.S. government should take into account the burden of the tariffs on importers. They say U.S. industries increase cost to manufacture products and provide services domestically because of the tariffs, and in turn that makes their exports and services less competitive abroad. Chinese exports to the U.S. jumped by nearly 32% in the first half of the year, while its imports from the U.S. surged by 44%. China has decided to award May 4th medals to young athletes who participated in the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. The May 4th medal is the highest honor for outstanding Chinese youth. The recipients include the nation's women's and men's table tennis teams, as well as 39 individuals. The United Nations Climate Panel is warning that in about a decade, temperatures will likely exceed the level of warming that world leaders are trying to prevent. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released its report on Monday, and it says that humans are unequivocally to blame for the Earth's increasing temperatures. IPCC Chair Ho-Sung Lee says the report will serve as a timely new evidence base for negotiators at the UN climate negotiations that are starting in less than 3 months.
First, it tells us that it is indisputable that human activities are causing climate change and making extreme weather events more frequent and severe. Second, it shows that climate change is affecting every region on our planet.
The report explains that strong, rapid, sustained reductions in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions would be required to limit global warming. World leaders agreed in the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement to try to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
What about all the heat released by nuclear radiation?
1.1 degrees Celsius.
Towers are releasing
Under
heat
the high
nonstop,
emission
whether we use the
scenarios in the
electricity or
report,
not.
the world will cross the 1.5 degrees Celsius warming mark in the 2030s. That's earlier than some past predictions. The U.S. Defense Secretary says that all members of the military are required to be vaccinated against COVID-19 by September 15th. Lloyd Austin adds that the deadline may be pushed up in the face of changes in regulations or exacerbation of the pandemic situation. President Joe Biden's announced that he's directed the Pentagon to look into how and when they'll add COVID-19 to the list of vaccinations the armed forces must get. So far, over 1 million troops have been fully vaccinated.
Well, that's helpful.
France has expanded its special COVID-19 pass requirement to include domestic travel, trains, and restaurants. Train passengers will now have to show a QR code proving that they've had the special health pass to travel on major intercity routes. The special pass is issued to people who are vaccinated against COVID-19, who have proof of recovery from an infection, or have a recent negative test. It's also required for long-distance travel by plane and bus. The measure also applies to tourists visiting the country.
What do you mean?
Russia has resumed flights to Egyptian resorts on the Red Sea, ending a 6-year ban after the deadly bombing of a Russian airliner. Moscow stopped flights after the local branch of the Islamic State group downed the plane shortly after takeoff from Sharm el-Sheikh in 2015, killing all 224 people on board. The Russian State Aviation Agency has cleared 8 Russian airlines to operate flights to the region from 43 cities across Russia. However, that list does not include St. Petersburg, the destination of the Russian airliner that was downed over Sinai. Prior to the ban, Russians were the top visitors to Egypt, with about 3 million tourists recorded in 2014.
That's intriguing.
South Korea will release Samsung scion Lee Jae-young on parole this week after he spent 18 months in prison for his role in a corruption scandal that triggered nationwide protests and led to the ouster of the country's previous president. The announcement came with a year left on Lee's 30-month sentence. Lee runs the Samsung Group in his capacity as vice chairman of Samsung Electronics. He was convicted of bribing then-President Park Geun-hye under close confidant to win government support for a 2015 merger between two Samsung affiliates that tightened his control over the corporate empire. This is Shane Bigham live from the Chinese capital. Coming up in business, rising prices in China.
You're listening to the Beijing Hour, 60 minutes of comprehensive news, your window on China and the world.
36 past the hour. U.S. markets ended mixed on Monday, dragged down by overall weakness in the energy sector. Europe also finished mixed. Market observer John Terrett has more.
The Dow then down 1/3 of 106 points. The Nasdaq up 1/16 24 points, and the S&P 500 down by just 4 points, just below the all-time record, though it has to be said. Energy, the worst performing sector today. Now, Swift, let's go back to Europe. And in London, the market was ahead by 1/13 of 1%. Germany down by 1/10 of 1%. The CAC in Paris off by 3 or 4 points only. They were watching sliding oil and sliding other commodity prices as well.
Investors are eyeing surging COVID-19 cases as the pandemic continues in the United States. The average daily increase of cases in the country was over 97,000 in the 7-day period ending on Sunday. The U.S. Labor Department reported that job openings in the country hit a record 10 million in June. The Chinese markets closed higher Monday. Market analyst Timothy Pope has more.
The Chinese mainland markets were mostly higher, led by property and financial stocks. The Shanghai Composite Index rose about 1%. We did see July property sales data released by several key developers, and that led to a big jump in those stocks. China Vanke rose by about 5.6%. Season Holdings was up 6.7%, and the mid-sized developer Gemdale gained 8.8%. Season also issued a profit alert, which Bloomberg analysts say implies a 40% increase in net profit for that company for the first half of the year, mostly thanks to money made by the Chinese mainland division. There were also some strong performances for financial and consumer stocks, but liquor makers in particular are still playing catch-up after a rough couple of weeks. Guizhou Multi was up 1.4%, taking it off a more than 9-month low. On the downside, there were chip makers. They fell after an editorial on official media here in China, which suggested that the regulators would not look kindly on speculation on semiconductor companies, given the global chip shortage that we're seeing at the moment. SMIC was down 5%. Gigadevice Semiconductor lost an additional 3.2%, and Anji Microelectronics shared 2.7%. That led to a bit of pain on the Star 50 index, the innovation board here in Shanghai, which has a pretty high concentration of chip makers.
That was market analyst Timothy Pope from Shanghai. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index closed up 0.4%. In Singapore, the Straits Times Index closed almost flat. In Japan, the Nikkei was up by 0.3%. Official data shows that factory prices in China rose at a faster than expected pace in July as the world's second largest economy continues to gather momentum. The National Bureau of Statistics says the Producer Price Index, a gauge of industrial profitability, rose 9% from a year earlier last month. The figure beat analysts' expectations for PPI to rise 8.8%, unchanged from June. The Stats Bureau says the higher PPI growth was partly due to sharp price hikes in crude oil and coal. Meantime, the Consumer Price Index grew by 1% on an annual basis, while non-food prices rose 2.1% year-on-year in July. The slower growth was partly driven by a drop in food prices, which declined 3.7% year-on-year last month. And with more on this, we're joined by financial analyst Einar Tangen. Good morning, and what do you make of this elevated PPI reading and the steady CPI for July?
Well, quite frankly, it's a kind of interim market. We'll have to see how things develop as we go forward. Remember, there's been some real pressure on food prices in the U.S. The heat dome that's over the basically 1/3 of the United States as you go west is going to affect productivity in terms of the crop yields. There have been other areas already. There had been some indication that food prices are going to rise in the United States and other places. But interestingly enough, despite all this talk of decoupling, trade is actually going up, and that should benefit China.
Well, then how do you expect downstream enterprises and domestic consumption to ultimately be affected by the high PPI readings now?
Well, it's not. There's going to be at some point some pass-through of these increased costs to the consumers. So there's going to be some inflation. The government has moved a number of times to make sure that these aren't, speculative bubbles. Not only did they move against grains and things like that, where people were trying to hoard them and things, but they did similar things last month when they started to make sure that iron ore prices weren't being skewed by speculation.
Well, then looking ahead, what policy measures?
And that's why I recycle all my metal in the city bins, and I don't try not to let it go to the trash.
To support the economy.
Chinese policymakers are being very pragmatic. They've already said that no one knows what is going to happen given the COVID-19 situation, especially because of the international situation, the kind of ongoing mishandling of it. So right now, they're keeping their powder dry. I would expect interest rate reductions. I mean, reserve rate ratio requirements for banks to be reduced maybe once or twice. Loan rate easing could also be another way of responding to this, make sure there's enough liquidity in the market, especially for small and medium-sized enterprises, which are going to be a continuing priority for the government. And then there could be some manipulating of capital infrastructure projects, speeding up some in order to put people back to work. So it'll be very pragmatic. It'll be based on what is happening in the markets, and especially with COVID-19.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. That's financial analyst Einar Tangen with an analysis on China's PPI and CPI data for July. 43 past the hour. The recovery of China's small and medium enterprises continues to slow down as businesses feel the pressure of high commodity prices and COVID-19. The small and medium-sized enterprises development index posted 87.0 in July. That was down 0.2 points from the previous month. The China Association of Small and Medium Enterprises said the index fell for a fourth consecutive month, showing that the recovery rate of SMEs has slowed down. Industrial experts said that the impact of COVID-19 and the rise in commodity prices has pushed up the production and operation costs of SMEs. China's logistics activity posted slower expansion in July due to severe downpours and typhoons in the country's central and eastern regions. The China Federation of Logistics and Purchasing says the logistics performance index came in at 50.3 last month, down 4.3 points from June. Readings above 50 indicate expansion. China's published guidelines aimed at establishing Shanghai's Pudong New Area as a pioneer area for what is themed, or rather termed, socialist modernization. Part of this involves introducing reforms to help make setting up small and medium-sized businesses faster and easier. Chen Tong reports.
Japan owns a firm selling beauty equipment in the Shanghai district of Pudong. In the past, companies like the one he runs needed to obtain several different licenses to start operations, while it used to take a week for companies like his to get a business license. The waiting period has now been reduced.
What? It only takes 3 working days to get our business license, meaning we can immediately start up our business.
Reforms like this have been in place here for the past 2 years.
So how do I move there?
If you wanted to open a convenience store, you needed to go to 5 different places.
I could be the Western owner. I could be the North American English-speaking guy. You guys could mutter at me. you know, you'd
These days,
speak
the
English to
reforms
me
mean you only
and
need
sort of make
one
fun, like act like you don't quite speak it
Since
too
the end
well.
of June,
And as you're walking
companies
away,
in
you'll make fun of
31
me for not
industries have
speaking
been able to
Chinese.
enjoy the
And I'll yell at you in
process.
broken Chinese that
This
I can
range from
understand you.
dining and e-commerce to companies selling medical
Free
equipment.
trade, eh? So like everything I would need to buy to run the store, if I'm buying it there, it's duty, whatever type of tax free, right?
New businesses.
It's 2, 3, 4, 5
Companies
o'clock.
only need
It's
to
2, 3,
know
4,
who
5
they
o'clock.
are and what they are planning to do. The rest is handled by the government.
Companies say the reforms have been helpful. A survey conducted by a local government says 87% of the companies say they've helped to improve the business environment here. Last October, China's State Council decided to expand reforms across the country.
Yeah,
They
we were
say the
tuned into
aim is
that.
to learn from Pudong and benefit more companies.
I want to open a convenience store in
As
China.
for Pudong, officials say the goal is to make market access procedures
I'll call it
as
Michael's.
easy as online shopping.
That's Chen Tong
With no apostrophe,
You're
just
listening to the
Michael's.
Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, Chinese athletes returning home from the Tokyo Olympics.
And I'm not sure how you would transliterate that to
Dive
Chinese.
into the sports world with Sideline Story.
I'm not sure how you would transliterate that to Chinese, but I want just a symbol for Michael's or Mike's, like just two of them, or maybe the symbol for a microphone, just two of them, like the two mics or double mics, or the symbol for two, which is two lines, something like that.
Subscribe to Sideline
Let's go to
Story
Michael's.
on Apple Podcasts,
He's got
Spotify,
Coca-Cola
iHeartRadio,
and what do you want, Pepsi or Mars bars, whatever the fuck.
47 past the hour now. Turning to sports, and here's Young Guang.
You
Thank
would
you,
come
Shane.
visit
The
my
last batches
convenience
of Chinese
store.
Olympic athletes have returned to the country
I
after
would wear a
competing at
redneck
the
John
Tokyo
Deere
Games.
hat.
The team finished
what
the
else would I
second in the
wear?
medal count with 38 golds,
I get the hooded
32
sweaters
silvers,
good,
and
but,
18 bronze medals. Chinese Delegation Secretary General Liu Guoyong says the athletes demonstrated an upbeat spirit in the
You'd be like,
Olympic
how y'all
journey.
doing today? And you'd be like, how y'all doing?
The Chinese delegation successfully accomplished its mission in Tokyo, harvesting good results in both competition and spirit. The youngsters born after the year 2000 have presented a look at Chinese youth, and veterans like Su Bingtian have also performed very well. They showcase the spirit of a great nation. They are modest when winning and gracious when losing.
The athletes landed back in different cities and will take quarantine before preparing for the upcoming Chinese National Games. Liu says the athletes will still have busy schedule in the days ahead.
After the Tokyo Olympics, the Chinese athletes will prepare for the National Games and the ensuing Asian Games in Hangzhou. We'd like to take the Asian
of her own, and Alfonso David, leader of the Human Rights Campaign, were consulted last winter about a letter the Cuomo administration drafted attacking former economic development advisor Lindsay Boylan's credibility. According to the Attorney General's report, Kaplan told the administration, with some adjustments, the letter would be fine to send out. I'm Mike Gracia.
680 News Time, 7:48. For the past decade or more, millennials have shifted the way we look at culture, politics, and now work. Deborah Ryder from City News is exploring the latest trend affecting those of a certain generation working remotely.
The pandemic forced many who worked remotely to reevaluate their work culture and leadership, pushing many towards what Unicorn Lab CEO Fahad Al-Hattab calls the Great Resignation. While speaking on the Sandler Pratt Show, Al-Hattab shares how millennials aren't quitting their jobs because of better government handout, but mainly due to poor leadership.
They don't feel a sense of purpose. They don't feel a sense of meaning. They don't feel a sense of contribution. When we see high levels of lacking engagement, then we see higher turnover rates.
Fahad Al-Hattab adds the latest trend in startups is moving towards small team connections that inspire and engage the entire group
You've
together.
been listening to the Beijing Hour too.
Of work and social life go hand
roundtable.
in
You know what I
hand.
meant.
Deborah Ryder, City News.
She's been listening to Roundtable too. She must have been.
To occur, we've allowed stage 3 openings, riskier activities, and no restrictions on
Just a
those
minute
for
earlier.
the unvaccinated.
Well, that is biostatistician Ryan Imran, who will tell anyone and everyone who listens that the fourth wave is here and Doug Ford's to blame because he's not forcing vaccine passports, right? He's one of many on these science tables who don't believe that restrictions should be lifted at all. There was another medical expert over the last few days who wrote an op-ed for the Globe saying vaccines won't save us.
and any kind of reopening is reckless. There are many in the science and medical fields who actually believe in a zero COVID strategy and who fail to see that is a fantasy. But they want to seem to live in lockdowns indefinitely, and they keep people kind of under their thumb. Unless it's a federal election, which they've said nothing about, they're okay with lockdowns. Dr. Kwadwo Kiramenteng joins me here now, practices palliative care at the Ottawa Hospital, professor also at the University of Ottawa, also host of the podcast Salt in Healthcare. And doctor, you did not like the normalization of this kind of messaging. You spoke out against it.
Yeah, number one, thanks for the opportunity, Alex. And yeah, my concern was, first off, when I read the article, there's quite a few things I actually agree with. I think we both want to be able to get out of this pandemic. We want to be able to, protect the public as best we can. My concern was that, we can't indefinitely keep this up. And I do want to hear personally some plans to how we can get out of this. Like, what is the approach? Vaccinations, education, some level of risk tolerance is going to have to be implemented to be able to move forward. And so I want to see us more have that conversation on how do we truly get out of this when this virus is not going anywhere. It's clear that from all the experts that, an elimination strategy is not possible.
With the animals,
so how do we get through this without continuing to destroy the fabric of society and trying to be human again? And these are the things that I think that need to be conversated about.
Yeah, the problem is when you get an outlier or someone who pushes back, then they tend to get a lot of blowback. I mean, you need to look only, to our friends in Alberta, to what happened to Dr. Hinshaw when she announced that they would be lifting as many restrictions as possible. I mean, she had to take to an op-ed page herself to say, look, I'm sorry I scared you. But she was pretty adamant, doctor, in saying, look, this is not sustainable. We are ignoring other illnesses and deaths like opiates, like cancers, like mental health issues, and we have to start learning to live like this. But I do believe that there is so much political partisanship now, within the medical community on these science tables that everyone's got an interest. But what they've lost interest in is the well-being of kind of all of society and moving together with this thing.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, this is one thing that I personally feel like has been missing in the conversation, missing in the modeling is what is the cost-benefit approach? Like, with every decision that we make, there's consequences and a cost that we need to factor in. So if we do choose to go through the lockdowns, what does that not only mean to the in terms of the COVID response, but what, as you mentioned, other illnesses, cancer screening, mental health, child maltreatment, the economy, social determinants of health, all these things need to be factored in. And what Dr. Henshaw was clearly, illustrating is that that needs to come further into the equation. We need to really consider these things because all these things are health. All these things matter. And so, I really commend her leadership, and I think the one thing that we don't know the answer to is, this, what Alberta's doing is what we need to move towards eventually. The question is when. And they felt, based on their expertise, based on, what they're seeing in different parts of the world, for example, in the UK right now, they felt that their time is now, and you have to respect that.
Well, we should respect that. I mean, if we believe in science, I don't think we can be as selective about it. I mean, this is what we're told. But in Ontario, we're heading into an election in the next year. We're also heading to a federal election possibly any day now. And I think to myself, well, if it's safe enough to have a federal election, why are we already hearing conversations about more restrictions, possible school closures? I mean, we seem to be either in this area of Stockholm syndrome, or we have just gotten used to the narrative of those in charge saying what we can't do, and for whatever reason we're not pushing for what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I find this I don't know if fascinating is the right word, but we're 18 months in, and we're not. You would think we'd have some more provocative solutions to some of these concerns. Like, you think about like a year ago, the idea of vaccines was just kind of like a theoretical one, and now we have them. They're highly effective at focusing, especially when we focus on the outcomes that matter. Like, are you going to get severely ill or die from COVID? And these vaccines that we have at our disposal are extremely effective at doing that. So we have that information. We have the knowledge of the negative impacts of some of our other actions. To me, this is why I'm a bit shocked sometimes that we talk about the same approach to the same problem. And I think I've been on the show too, Alex. We can't forget that there's a level of lockdown in the GTA since what was it? Was it October?
Longest in the world or some shit.
And there were still waves. There was still a strain on the system. And so to approach that same problem with the same approach, to me, would be a serious issue.
Yeah, and part of the changing of the attitudes, I think, is reporting cases. I don't see why we're reporting cases now on a daily basis. What we should be reporting is hospitalizations, because that is what counts. I mean, if we reported cases of pneumonia or colds, people would be super freaked out because it would be tens of thousands.
Because they're not spreading anymore. And coronavirus is a cold. Cold is coronavirus. Get that out of your fucking head that it's something different.
There's no way we're ever getting rid of this thing. So let's all learn how to live with it.
Absolutely. Like I'm glad you mentioned the metric that I think is so important, as you mentioned the hospitalizations, because of that decoupling ability of the vaccines. Like we really should be celebrating the almost miraculous impacts that our vaccines are having, and really that is the metric that's most important. And we know that our unfortunately in Ontario, hospitalizations, it only took, it's crazy to think about, but in a city of province of 15 million, 900 patients really put us to our knees. But this is what we need to evaluate. This is what we need to put our focus on.
I think everything's all good.
Because as you said, this virus isn't going anywhere, and the impact of that virus, like if I know I can have as a result, a runny nose, a mild cough, or sore throat, ultimately, and that vaccine is preventing me from landing in an ICU, like, thank you. Like, we should be celebrating that.
There you go. All right. Well, I'm happy to have the conversation and continue to have it, because we do need to be doing that. And I appreciate your time. I know you're on call and very tired, so always appreciate you having you on.
Thanks so much, Alex. Really appreciate it.
That is Dr. Kwadwo Kyeremanteng, who is in palliative care over at the Ottawa Hospital. Also has a podcast if you're looking to hear his opinions.
What about all the people dying from the drug-resistant bacteria in the tap water? Because there's so much drugs in the tap water.
Ostracized for even suggesting it. When we get back, your news at the top of the hour, then let's talk about house affordability. It is a daily headline. Will it be an election issue? It should be, especially if the Liberals are quietly planning to tax our biggest investment. We'll talk about that next. Stay with us here on Point. I'm Alex Pearson. This is Global News Radio.
Just missed the top of the hour news? Get caught up in less than 60 seconds. Just add the flash briefing skill to Alexa, then set it to play 640 Toronto. And don't forget, you can listen to us live anytime by telling any smart speaker to play 640 Toronto.
I got the Captain Picard set up there.
Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
Time now for a check on the roads with a look at shopper traffic. Here's Ari Rabinovich.
Well, the evening drive is pretty quiet right now, but there is one new trouble spot. Westbound 401 Express past Avenue Road. Right lane's blocked for a stall right near Bathurst, so a delay from Avenue Road and the Express collector's a little bit better. It's also slow west 401 through Mavis towards Mississauga Road because of that long-term construction forcing collector and Express to merge together. Delays as well northbound 410 through Queen, and on the southbound 400 past Teston, some delays starting to build here as the left lane's blocked with overnight construction. Ready to buy your dream home? Purple Bricks Realtors are with you every step of the way, and you get $2,000 in cash back. Visit purplebricks.ca. I'm Ari Yerbinovich, Global News Radio 640 Toronto Chopper Traffic.
Insightful, engaging, and and intelligent. This is CFMJ Global News Radio 640 Toronto, a Chorus Entertainment Company. You're listening to Global News Radio. This is Global News at 8 o'clock.
Good evening from the Global News Desk. I'm Darren Boland. The falls at Niagara, Ontario are once again wowing American tourists as COVID-19 restrictions ease after 17 months. Lineups of vehicles sat at the border crossings for over an hour at times Monday just for people to cross into Canada. And many of those who made the trip are happy to once again be able to take in the sights and sounds.
I've always wanted to see Niagara Falls. She's really into architecture, so we're going to go to Toronto.
First time for a while, about 16 months. Worth the wait. We're going to our cottage.
Well, non-essential U.S. travelers who've had a full course of a Health Canada approved COVID-19 vaccine are now allowed into the country. And they don't have to quarantine, but they have to show a negative COVID test no older than 72 hours. Well, for many businesses and tourist attractions, the reopening of the border is offering hope of an influx in tourism. Well, speaking with Global News, Peter Doyle, General Manager of Ripley's Aquarium of Canada, says visitors will have a much different experience now than in the past.
We have safety protocols in place. So we have a reduced capacity number that we've been operating at since we reopened. We're only open for 2 weeks. We practice social distancing throughout the aquarium. So we are confident we're operating within the protocols.
Well, Doyle says the summer is a critical month for tourism businesses and says the reopening of the border to U.S. citizens is substantial, as close to a third of visitors they welcome are American tourists. Well, COVID-19 daily case numbers surging over the weekend here in Ontario, more than doubling from just a week ago, and some are already ringing the alarm bells and are calling for stricter measures. But as Global's Camille Karamali reports, health experts are asking the public not to panic.
Hospitalizations are far lower than any wave in the past. Deaths were far lower than any wave in the past.
And that has health experts say not to push the panic button just yet. The Delta variant can spread among the vaccinated, but it's the hospitalizations we should really be watching to decide how the province should proceed.
What the vaccines are doing with respect to Delta is that they're preventing severe disease. You can still get sick, but you can overcome that on your own without needing to go to the hospital and going to the ICU.
Health experts say as cases rise, hospitalizations should continue to remain steady. They believe the only way ICU numbers increase is if there are outbreaks among the unvaccinated, which is why many believe vaccine passports are the best way to determine how the province moves forward with loosening measures.
If you have not received the vaccination, you should not be eligible for some of those stage 3 activities because they're much more higher risk. That's what they were stating.
You should not be eligible.
Camille Karamali, Global News.
Well, more than 2,500 people have signed an
See my
online
hair
petition
trying
calling on
to
Governor
speak
General
up on
Mary
me.
Simon to reject any request by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for a snap election. The petition, launched by nonprofit organization Democracy Watch, comes as rumors swirl that an election call is coming this summer. Global's Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stevenson explains what the political calculation would be behind the Trudeau Liberals' reasoning for calling a federal election.
The calculation is all about whether the Liberals can get a majority government. It's the risk of going to the polls in what some will see as a pandemic power grab, but one that holds the intoxicating possibility for the Liberals of a win that would guarantee them 4 more years and insulate them against any possible post-pandemic political backlash. The fourth wave has the opposition calling the Liberals irresponsible for thinking about triggering a non-essential election that would see a cross-Canada campaign and tours. But a fourth wave may not hurt the Liberals politically. Voters tend to favor incumbent governments in times of crisis, and other countries and provinces have held successful pandemic elections. But with COVID numbers on the rise and exponentially higher right now than they were at this time last year and continuing to climb with the Delta variant, it means that the clock is ticking on that writ dropping.
Well, the head of the United Nations is describing the predictions in a new climate report as a code red for humanity. The 3,000-page report from a UN-appointed panel of experts concludes that ice melt and sea level rise are already accelerating. Bob Kopp, co-author of the report, says even if carbon emissions are cut, the effects of climate change will be noticed over the next 30 years.
We're likely looking at about 15 to 30 centimeters, or about 6 to 12 inches of global average sea level rise through the middle of the century. On average, this would increase the likelihood of what used to be considered a once-in-a-century high water level more than tenfold.
Well, the report says further warming is unavoidable due to the greenhouse gases humans have already released into the atmosphere. Well, newly acquired Toronto Raptors Raptors forward Precious Achiuwa says he will do whatever it takes to help the team win. Speaking with reporters after his first practice with the Raptors Summer League team in Las Vegas today, the 21-year-old talked about how it feels to be a part of the Raptors organization.
I mean, it's exciting. A young group of guys being able to be part of a program that wants to win. And also look at it as an exciting opportunity to develop my game and also look forward to winning basketball games and going far in the season.
Achiuwa and veteran guard Gordon Dragic were acquired in the sign-and-trade deal that sent all-star guard Kyle Lowry to the Miami Heat last week. And some of Canada's top tennis stars are in action tonight in the opening rounds of the National Bank Open in Montreal. Quebec's Leila Fernandez is scoring off against Britain's Harriet Dart. Now, Dart took the first set 7-5, and it's all tied up at 0 in the second set. Meanwhile, Toronto's Rebecca Marino will take the court later tonight to take on the U.S.'s Madison Keys. Now, meanwhile, in Toronto, Vancouver's Vasek Pospisil is competing in men's singles action, facing off against American Tommy Paul. And that game now still in the first set. It's all tied up at 6. Missed the beginning of this newscast? Use your Alexa speaker to hear Toronto's top stories on demand. Set your flash briefing to play 640 Toronto. Looking at your forecast from the Global News Weather Center, cloudy tonight with the chance of an overnight thunderstorm. And the temperature tonight ranging
No, Alexa, cancel that. Delay that order, number one.
I'm Darren Boland, and this is Global News.
You better be good. I'm tuning out. I swear to God.
This is On Point with Alex Pearson on Global News Radio.
8:06 here on this Monday night. A very hot Monday at that. And I love this weather, but even I admit this is a bit much. Just a bit. Great to have you here along for us. You know, for many,
can you not hear your musical samples?
Slipping away.
The bumpers, can you change it?
And they blame hot markets. But even when the markets are cool, it's still really hot, way too hot for most to get in. And a lot of people demand, well, the government's got to do something. Yeah, sorry, no. The last thing we want is any government meddling with the free market. They mess up everything. You know, they don't need to bug around with the free market. The way I look at it, you know, if governments really wanted to help people own homes, you know,
this government is an equivalent to government job.
They could remove the massive land transfer tax grab paid provincially. And if you live in Toronto, you also pay a massive tax to the state.
A lot of people with their job are government employees.
People might actually have enough for a down payment. But home ownership should in fact be an election issue, because while the Trudeau Liberals have been denying that they plan to ever bring in this capital gains tax, you know, this is something that a seller would pay if your home sells for more than what you bought it in. Guess what? That's just the reality in this market. With debt and deficits pretty much out of control, this would bring them in about $7 billion a year. So they want to put taxes, on their homes so that they can get their way out of this. And, you know, most people rely
prices more in the houses
on living off their biggest investment in retirement. And that's why I think, you know, a lot of people should be very suspectful that this government may in fact run on this without running on it. Chris Sims is executive director of the Canadian Taxpayers Association in BC, and she wrote about this particular issue in this weekend's Sun. I appreciate you joining me.
Thanks for having us.
This isn't some notion that they may do it or they may not. I mean, this story about home equity tax really raised its head when Blacklock's reporter broke it last year. You know, they spent over, $250 million researching through the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation to see how it would work, how much they could make. And then when, of course, it leaked out, and I think it was through Adam Vaughan that it leaked out, they said, oh, no, we're not looking at a capital gain tax. I mean, as soon as you hear a government, Chris, even hinting at it, it means it's being looked at.
Oh, yeah, they were skating backwards faster than Paul Coffey on that one last summer. And yeah, you're right. They spent $250 million studying this through UBC, through a special group that's called Generation Squeeze. And that group has previously published studies, like out loud for everybody to read and hear, that talks about the need for a home equity tax or a capital gain tax on the sale of your primary residence. Now, we got to be clear, if you're a professional house flipper and you own several homes and you're flipping it over and over and over, yeah, you do already pay capital gains tax. That's not what we're talking about. The feds are thinking about taxing the average Joe and Sally six-pack when they sell their own home. The one you're living in right now, the one that lots of folks are depending on for either their nest egg so that when they sell and then downsize into some tiny condo or mobile home or something when they're older, they can use that money to live off of it, or give some of that money to their Gen X kids or their millennial grandkids so they can afford a down payment for their own home. And then even on the other side of the spectrum, there are young families that are pinching their pennies and busting their butts, living in tiny little apartments and condos, and they're counting on the sale of that to give them a little bit of extra money to maybe find a home with a yard to upgrade when they have kids. So yeah, the government is sniffing hard to see if they can get some of that money. And you're right. The last study that we saw out of UBC pegs it at $7 billion a year. But this is key, Alex. The way that Justin Trudeau spends money, that would be gone in like 5 days.
10 seconds. Yeah.
4.5 billion on one pipeline.
Politicians gone wild on Parliament Hill right
now. It doesn't exist and will never exist.
No level of fiscal discipline, but yet there's still a sniffing around your nest egg.
Yeah, before coming to our nest egg, put your own house in order. See where you can create savings. I mean, you look at the border agent issue that's been simmering for the last 3 years. I mean, they did nothing for the taxpayer. They just simply turned around, 2 days later and said, well, here's your raise, here's your increased benefits. When they can actually show that they're able to cut and bring in their own budgets, then come talk to us. But we are nickel and dimed at every level of government. I pointed out the land transfer tax, especially in Toronto where you pay 2. That is an enormous part of a down payment. That's it can have well over $100,000 that you could be putting into the equity of your home, and you can't do that. But you've got this government that they're talking about maybe doing this, or maybe a wealth tax. It's so popular here. Well, just tax the wealth. The wealthy people, there's no level or no area they don't want to tax to get them out of a situation, which really just requires them to stop spending.
Yes, exactly. And same thing with the wealth tax. They blow through that in like about a week, depending on what they decide to call wealth. And all that is just, cheap retail politics, because it's fun during an election to say, oh, eat the rich. It's like, oh, well, what are you going to do for the other 360 days a year? The issue here is they have a serious spending problem. It's like frat party level non-discipline going on there. They have a spending problem, not a revenue problem.
In school, he's not in blackface and brownface, wasn't it?
Nitty-gritty of contracts at this point. Don't waste $2 billion on the Phoenix pay system.
Mm-hmm.
Don't waste.
Some employees can get paid for a year and a half, 2 years.
Artists around the world.
Can you imagine going to work every day for 2 years and not getting paid for that? You get paid in ad.
Or $1 billion on rapid tests that still haven't even been handed out. I mean, this notion that eat the rich and
those are for the bomb shelter at the Parliament Hill. Those are for us.
Is actually who suffers the greatest penalty. I mean, certainly lower and lower marginalized people, they get blocked right out. But the middle class, which we can't even define in this country, end up paying the bulk of this because there just aren't enough rich people to make our problems go away. And so it's a really disingenuous argument, but yet it will be bought by so many people. I mean, people want, for whatever reason, for the government to fix something that I think, Chris, they helped create. You're out in BC. If the government really wanted to cool down the market in housing, maybe stop letting people come and launder their money through our country, buying up all the real estate. That is one thing they could do that would bring down the prices, but they just don't care.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to do the hard stuff or the stuff that might make them feel uncomfortable, but they'll want to turn around and screw the middle class and those working hard to join it, to borrow a phrase. They also want to make it as difficult as possible to build new homes. Like, for example, out here in BC, there's PST, provincial sales tax, on every single element of building a home. I mean, from the concrete and the rebar and the foundation to the shingles on the roof. It's estimated to cost around $25,000 extra just for the PST. Like, they do next to nothing to try to make housing more affordable. And you're talking about land transfer tax. That's a great point. Last I checked, in the BC budget, for example, they take in around $2 billion a year in the land transfer tax. Yeah. That's becoming a part of their internal government economy. So yeah, no wonder they're not bothering to do anything to actually reduce the price. And this is key here. I really want to zero in on this, the so-called capital gains or home equity tax. If you do that, if you make it so that it's going to cost you a lot more to sell your house, you can do one of two things. You can sit tight and decide not to sell your home. That takes the house off the market. That reduces supply. Or you could just tax that amount on to the end of your listing price. So you just up the price. So in order to fight the housing crisis, we're going to
like a foreign ownership tax that you probably voted for.
That makes no sense.
Right. Yeah. Or the mere mention. I mean, if people do get the sense that there's going to be a capital gain tax, I mean, most people are just going to say, to hell with it. I will sell this now. You'll flood the market with a bunch of houses. People won't get out and rent and just say, I'm not giving more money to the government, which is probably also to be sniffing around for a death tax. But, the article that you pen, I mean, the CMHC is so out of its lane these days on what its actual mandate is. They are no longer about making sure that loans are secured and mortgages are secured. They're actually looking more activist by the day, trying to figure out how to get people into houses, telling people who live on their own that they should, give a room away. I mean, they've actually gone pretty wonky of late.
It really has, and it's gotten very political, and so much so that you mentioned Black Box Reporter, which is an outstanding website.
Yeah.
Independent journalism.
I'm on at 9. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. So they broke the story, like you said, last summer. CMHC had the audacity to say that this is basically fake news and you're not reporting this right. We did access information, Alex, on CMHC, emails back and forth between Generation Squeeze and CMHC saying this is my bag, baby. We are going to be investigating what you would call a home equity or a capital gains tax. So dead to rights. That's exactly what they knew they were going to be funding through this study. And this is key here. If the federal government is going to say, oh, no, we're not thinking about taxing that, nothing to see here, people, why is Revenue Canada asking you how much you made on the sale of your home?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Right.
Are they just curious?
Yeah, generally, if it's brought up, that means it's already in the works. And, methinks Adam Vaughan doth protest too much because he was adamant that this was not a thing. In fact, the emails we saw, from him as well in the papers, I guess it was in the last election, saying that they were looking into this. I mean, that stuff doesn't just happen by coincidence in politics. So you know that if they get their majority, these are the things that they will be raising because they have to pay the bill somehow, and they just they'll get their.
They won't fix the other end of the ledger, though. This is the thing. They'll just spend like drunken sailors and just keep taxing us. So this is key. If folks are
drunken
sailors on their
sailors
doorstep,
are
keep
a
in mind they
key
might be paying
demographic of your station.
And you ask them. Doesn't matter which party they are. You ask them if they want a home equity capital gains tax on your house.
No kidding. Yeah, it's for many in the middle class, as you know, it is the only thing we have to retire on and or leave to our kids. So that's something that gets very personal for people. All right, thanks so much, Chris, for joining me. I always appreciate your thoughts on things.
Hang in there.
That is Chris Sims. She's with the Canadian Taxpayers Association in BC. I thought it was a really interesting read. And
we're going to talk about the Army or what?
No question. If they get a majority government, I have absolutely no doubt that they will bring in capital gains tax. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they come in with a wealth tax. That has also been proved not to work
wealth,
anywhere.
It's asset. It's an asset
European country
tax.
that has done it, it doesn't work.
Sure
There's
does.
4 countries left that have tried to do it.
Those are the countries with
the
most
moved away.
rich people and shit.
Didn't work. When we come back, we'll get into round 1 of Counterpoint, brought to you by our very good friends over at Pizzaville. We'll do that next. Stay with us here, Alex Pearson on Point, and this is Global News Radio.
And now time to go out and take a look at the roads with chopper traffic. Here's Ari Rabinovich.
Well, good news, at least westbound 401 Express past Avenue Road problems have been cleared, moving well through here now, but on the South 400 it's busy through Teston towards Major Mackenzie, and that's because of overnight construction. The left lane is blocked here. Also road work on the Toronto-bound QEW on the Skyway, where 2 left lanes are blocked there, and in Ajax, a new collision reported southbound Westney at Bailey. Break out your short shorts for the Adventure On event at your local Subaru dealer. Shop safely and enjoy great value on Subaru's award-winning lineup. I'm Ari Rabinovich, Global News Radio, 640 Toronto Chopper Traffic.
Hey, are you using multiple apps to run your construction jobs and projects? What's up with that? Consolidate all of your one-off apps with SiteMax and lighten up. SiteMax is a simple, powerful construction management platform for the field and office. You get safety, drawings, time cards, photos.
That millennials aren't quitting their jobs because of better government handouts, but mainly due to poor leadership.
Employees realize during remote work, hey, I don't really like this job. I'm not really engaged. and I'm more aware of my mortality, and I want to make sure that I have a job that feels purposeful.
The Unicorn Lab CEO adds the latest trend in startup is discovering how small team connections build strength and trust within the group, ultimately inspiring a consensus, which is a well-suited trait for the millennial mindset of work and social life go hand in hand. Deborah Ryder, City News.
Traffic and your extended forecast are just 60 seconds away. 6 City News Time.
Ferme, il avait ouvert périodiquement, il se rendait en voiture. À l'époque, c'était toute une aventure à New York, acheter du tabac cubain. Et puis c'est...
But the most important thing to note is that ZipRecruiter works. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Will you be part of the 82% who remember where you can try ZipRecruiter for free? It's ZipRecruiter.ca/save. Again, that exclusive link is ZipRecruiter.ca/save. That's ZipRecruiter.ca/save.
Hello? Joe, it's Tina from HR. You really impressed everyone during your interview, and we want to offer you the job.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's company policy to conduct a police background check. Is that going to be a problem?
Don't allow another job opportunity slip away. Contact Pardons and Waivers of Canada, PWOC, and get your criminal record expunged. PWOC.
Go straight to the Parole Board of Canada. These guys are just charging you money for paperwork.
416-498-7111. Online, PWOC.com.
Marineland is now open for another season of safe outdoor fun for the whole family. Pack a picnic or enjoy a meal at the Hungry Bear. Bring your bathing suits.
You guys under investigation for cruelty to
There are so many safe
wildlife
fun
or whatever.
to see and do, including 2 new rides. Visit the park this August, and your single-day ticket will be upgraded to a Seasons Pass fun card for free. Buy your tickets or learn more online at marineland.ca for your day of outdoor safe family fun.
Season fun pack.
In 200 meters.
A single ticket, because you realize that's like from the lowest price to the highest price.
No, wait, left. I think. Recalculating. K. I.
Oh, and that's the other thing China has.
Man. Just wanted you to know that. Okay. Recalculate.
The other two things China has, I forgot to type in because so much, I was listening too much. China has their own GPS system. So does, there's 4 of them in the world, or around the world. And, their own space station, because supposedly Chinese nationals are not allowed, or whatever, astronauts, whatever, are not allowed on the space station. But they're allowed in Canadian microbiology labs. Oh. Your lyrics don't make any sense.
Let's get into round 1 of Counterpoint, brought to you by our good friends over at Pizzaville, 416-736-3636. Or Pizzaville.ca. We've got Monday's Robert Urback Current Affairs columnist with Globe and Mail, Michael Diamond, founding Pizzaville over at Upstream Strategy Group. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Music may be all chippy. Here we are. Any day
Isn't it about drinking and driving or something?
We've got 3 Liberal MPs announcing they will not be running. Adam Vaughan has realized likely that he's not going to get off the backbench, and late today he says he's done with politics. Karen McCrinnan has got.
Is he going to get his own YouTube channel?
The man who not only did the full Monty during a Zoom
Search
session.
YouTube for Adam Vaughan.
Up the antics by peeing a cup.
Vaughan.
He's not running either. You're the election guy, the political guy, Michael. What do you see here? I was surprised. I thought Adam Vaughan was leaving maybe because he wanted to take a run at mayor. He says he's done with politics, but there's probably a bigger story at play. So he can't get off the back bench.
Y'all get a dog?
Look, I think Adam Vaughan was very surprised after the election.
Is Adam at your house right now?
I'm going to just go outside. But it's Adam Vaughn, but not the embassy for support anymore. But in the last
that dog is sending messages to all of our dogs.
Very, very surprised.
Your dog's pretending he doesn't listen. That's why they don't really look at the dog on TV. Or their ear moves. They're pretending not to listen. It's the secret messages.
Adam Vaughn was a destructive force in that caucus and really a bad parliamentarian for the rest of the country. So good to be rid of them. I think Will Amos
parliamentarian.
is a laughing stock. So I don't
He's a
think
bad
that one's
speaker.
particularly surprising.
That's what that word.
McCrimmon,
Parliament.
retirement just leaked out a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, it's for health reasons. He was actually a pretty good member of parliament, but who probably should have been in cabinet for the impressive pre-politics resume. But all that's to say is, yes, this definitely points to the signs of an election much sooner than later, and the fact that the Liberals in two of those ridings already
when you came back,
claimed candidates for their nomination.
He's been in the media. He's a public figure. He's out there.
Yeah, it's a very big riding, and it was a shoo-in for the Liberals. But to do so just a few days before a possible election, they can pass off. Vaughn's saying, "Yeah, no, this is normal. I talked to the Prime Minister," but it's not really normal. It's pretty close to the writ dropping.
I think it's pretty much what you said, Alex, which is that Adam Vaughn realized that his prospects within this caucus, at least, weren't going to go anywhere. He wasn't going to suddenly make it out of the caucus backbenches after this election if he survived, which likely he would in that riding. So I think he's moving on to greener pastures. I think he's bowed out of politics maybe for the next 20 minutes or so. I'll believe it when I see it. I wouldn't be surprised to see Adam Vaughn pop up in the mayoral race, even provincially.
Mayor of Toronto.
I mean, the parties are kind of rebuilding themselves at that level, so I could see him throwing his name into the hat. But I think Michael's right on in terms of, I think the Liberal caucus was heaving a sigh of relief just to hear that their biggest Twitter liability, Adam Vaughn, who has gotten himself in some trouble more than once and spoken outside of the Liberal Party line multiple times on Twitter, he's going to be relieving himself of that responsibility and relieving oneself. I guess that's a natural segue to Will Amos. That was
Let's not relieve ourselves.
Yeah, well, I think he didn't want to go for the hat trick of exposing himself. I think once is a mistake, twice is a problem, and 3 times is just a real embarrassment. So, I mean, we'll have to see what he gets up to, but hopefully we won't be seeing as much of what he gets up to in the future.
It was interesting, though. Adam Vaughn was talking about civility on his exit, saying it's time that we bring civility back to politics. And I'm thinking, really, dude?
Well, it's because he's leaving, so civility might come back.
Yeah, maybe it will. There you go. A petition started by the not-profit group Democracy Watch is calling for Governor General Mary Simon to reject the request from the Prime Minister for a snap election. They argue that it's unfair because voters have no time to plan or arrange their lives so they can either run as a candidate, volunteer, or even participate in the election in other ways. It seems, Michael, I mean, this too is a little political. I mean, Democracy Watch, this is what they do. They protect our democracy. So they're calling this basically what they see it as. It's opportunism of this election. But, the Canadian public don't want this election. They've said as much in polling. But the Prime Minister is determined to have it one way or another, despite the fact that we're being warned also of a very harsh fourth wave in the fall.
Well, I don't know a time when polling would indicate that the Canadian people wanted an election. So I think it's a silly question for pollsters to be taking. I think Democracy Watch really it's a complete lack of understanding of our democracy that they would think that this is an effort they should undertake, and that in a country of nearly 40 million, we have news headlines about a petition of 2,500 people is just laughable. So luckily, I don't think the Governor General will heed the request of these 2,500 individuals or of the Duff Conacher Vanity Project, being Democracy Watch, and that she'll do what her job is, and that would be to respect the will of the Prime Minister at this point in requesting another term. Sure, there's a lot of interest in him going to the polls now, but I don't think that really is something that we can base the request to dissolve the House on. And I also think any party that's to spend time talking about the timing of the election instead of issues that actually impact people, it will be a clear sign of who's winning and who's losing.
Bottom line is, it is at his feet, Robin. If this goes into a fourth wave, look, I'm all about easing restrictions, but for all the hair pulling out of all these experts saying no, everything's too dangerous to do. I mean, look, the only thing they're not saying it's too dangerous to do is have an election.
And good luck to the door knockers. I mean, no one's opening their doors these days, so to have them go to door and try to actually talk to people, I think is going to be a challenge. I think there's good arguments against an election, frankly. I don't think it should be in the Governor General's hands, as Michael said, to heed those objections. It would cause its own problem. For her to deny the request would be to signal that Trudeau doesn't have the confidence of the House, which would spike its own constitutional crisis. And I don't really see that happening. This election is going ahead. The Conservatives have already adopted the line pretty fulsomely that this election is a bad idea. And I think Michael's right in saying that. That kind of tells you where the polling is at this point. But I mean, things can change very quickly in elections. We've seen it happen before. There's certainly good reason why Trudeau would want this to happen now and quickly before the numbers of COVID-19 cases start to rise. But I don't think it's a done deal, especially if voters really aren't in the mood for an election and they see the numbers going up and they're wondering why we're doing this right now. I think there will be somewhat of an attitude among people to punish the incumbents and the people who called for this election. So
yeah, but that means we'll get like all sorts of small.
It's not a slam dunk by any means.
Fuck.
No, indeed, it is not. All right, let me pause it there, guys. We'll get into round 2 of Counterpoint after this quick break. And we'll talk a little bit about the Tokyo Games. They are over, and now it's on to Beijing, but polling suggests Canada as a whole don't want these games. In fact, are saying we should boycott them. And we'll talk just a little bit about the planes landing from Afghanistan, the fact that so far not one of the 3 planes landing have had an Afghan interpreter on them. So what gives? We'll talk about that bureaucratic mess in the making after this in round 2 of Counterpoint, brought to you by our good friends over at Pizzaville.
I think peppers are going in here too. I don't know what that is.
What saving on unlimited data with the TELUS family discount feels like. Like the meeting that could have been an email, actually becoming an email.
Temperatures tonight, 23 degrees, humidex 30. That's the low.
It's good tomato growing weather.
30 degrees, feeling like 41 with morning
give them lots of water, though. Lots of water. Keep watering, lots of water.
Thunderstorm watches and warnings in the morning. By the afternoon, we'll get into some sun, gusty winds, and another round of storms, but it looks like the late day storms will really be off to the north and into cottage country. Tonight, down to 23 degrees.
Right now in downtown Toronto, it's 27 degrees, feeling like 36, and partly cloudy. Over at Pearson Airport, it's similar conditions and also 27 degrees, feeling like 36. 680 News Time, 8:33.
If a fourth wave of COVID-19 grips the province, healthcare workers will not be able to clear a current backlog in elective surgeries. This warning coming from one of the city's ICU doctors.
680's Michelle Morton tells us this has renewed calls for the province to ramp up vaccinations.
If a fourth wave leads to admissions, Dr. Michael Warner says hospitals will not be able to work at the 110 to 115% capacity needed to clear the existing backlog that the province recently said it would invest millions of dollars into.
That investment will not
millions,
be
not hundreds of millions of billions like the last year or so.
Caring for COVID patients, and we'll essentially be back where we started, which means we'll be delaying and deferring non-COVID related care, which will cause patients to suffer and some will ultimately die.
To prevent this from happening, Warner says the Ford government needs to put a framework in place.
To see whether the hospital gets impacted by the fourth wave before they impart whatever measures they deem necessary to encourage people to get vaccinated.
Around 72% of the eligible population is fully vaccinated, and Warner says we need to get to at least 90% to reduce the risk of the Delta variant spreading. I'm Michelle Morton. 680 News Time, 8:34. Well, as of today, the Canadian border has reopened to fully vaccinated Americans for non-essential travel, which has made for some lengthy lineups at land crossings. But as 680's Caitlin Lee explains, officials aren't expecting a big boost to tourism right away.
It's the process, not here.
All you have to do.
shopping or see attractions.
For day trippers, it's an awful lot of work and hoops to jump through in order to be able to cross that border. So I'm not anticipating an influx of American tourists right off the hop.
Former Air Canada executive John Braddock says one thing is for sure, you are going to see more American license plates on the roads.
People have.
I see Mexican plates on the road now.
Come back and visit the cottage, make sure everything is in good shape.
And Tourism Roundtable calling it the first step.
They have the state on them, like Chihuahua or whatever.
Devastated by COVID-19 restrictions. I'm Caitlin.
If hot and humid temperatures are your thing, well, you're getting your wish this week. 680's Karen Zaolin joins us live on the Weather Watch. Karen?
James, Toronto will experience highs in the 30s, feeling like the 40s this week. It'll mark the longest stretch of hot weather this summer.
Yeah, Honeywell fans and Honeywell non-programmable thermostats. I'm dead serious. And Honeywell air filters.
31 degrees or warmer, and nighttime temps don't get below 20 degrees. Here's Natasha Ramsahai with more. The forecast
and leave the fan on instead of auto.
are not going to drop below 20 degrees until Friday night. Just a turn green. And I do think we are going to see that heat warning extended.
Would you mind, Papa?
1 degree short. 1 degree short of the heat warning. Yeah, leave the fan switch set to, it says fan on or auto. Leave it to on, so the fan is running all the time. Just leave it. Trust me.
Transformer de société montréalaise. Alors là, on découvre tout à coup qu'on peut être immigrant puis parler français. On peut s'intégrer à des écoles.
That airplane was low,
des écoles publiques francophones et on découvre que les enfants vont être, pour la première fois de l'histoire, adaptés à cette société québécoise et vont pouvoir porter le nom de citoyens québécois.
Qu'est-ce que vous avez aimé à l'Institut de recherche sur la culture?
Moi, j'ai trouvé qu'on m'a donné un espace, on m'a donné la possibilité de travailler sur la communauté juive. J'en ai profité pendant que j'étais là pour apprendre à Sénégal. Je me suis rapproché j'ai fait comme un terrain anthropologique. J'ai fréquenté la bibliothèque j'ai fréquenté ce qui a donné j'ai circulé aussi dans
Baba Mungu sikia baba kulia kwetu. Baba sikia baba kulia kwetu. Hatuko pesa tuko amani.
So I'm probably going to watch The Simpsons or some sort of sci-fi apocalyptic movie, or The Simpsons or something. Or both. Treehouse of Horror. Look at that, still scanning, nothing. No, I was hearing people, like, I swear, little kid on one end and then the grandmother or somebody on the other, things like that. I don't know what they're saying. I'm yelling out bad directions to the construction guys. Cancel that, cancel that. All right. Android, computer, bring up something with Homer and Bart Simpson, please.